morning. We just had some very strange events last night, so I stayed up till 3:30.
Oh yeah?
So yeah, it's weather events. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because we might get into that later, how it's best to manipulate it when the sky is at its thinnest.
Oh no, this is something else, but that's okay. This is something that's been going on
Okay.
10 days ago. Let me lower that music. We'll go in the other room. I don't know if you can hear it or if it's gating.
A little bit, just.
Yeah. All right, there we go. All right, nothing like music to wake you up. And also, I've never really done an interview or spoken. Still in the semi-alpha state here. So, we could. Is Zan around?
Oh yeah, I'm right here, sir.
We're recording. Oh, Zan, all
Hey.
right. Oh, you don't have to serve me, man.
Yeah, you're right. I got to get out that habit.
Yeah.
Do that all day over here.
That's fine. That's all right. That's all right. There's good habits and bad habits either way. Yeah, man, cool. It's been a while. Oh, I see you now. Okay, cool. Yeah, you're ready. You've got you're at 9:30 there, right? We're an hour difference.
9:17. Yes, correct. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Maybe one day we'll do a video.
That's on you.
But,
you know,
No, I'm just I gotta get a wig and all that stuff. Put makeup on, man. No, I'm just joking. So, what are you guys thinking about? It's been a while, right? So,
it's been a long
I'm already
time.
recording, so it's
yeah, that's
whenever.
fine. Yeah,
But
whenever.
yeah, we're gonna do it about water and maybe a little bit of weather, because they're related.
Super. Yeah, we have a lot of people. Yeah, I'll let you in on what's going on while we're on there.
Sweet.
Right. Yeah, man.
So, you want to start like Zan?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. 3, 2, 1. All right, everyone. So we have Daniel Sala and the Greek once more. Very happy. We are going to discuss, for the most part, at least start off with water, weather, and then get into some wild card stuff. But anyway, Daniel, if you want to take it away, introducing the topics.
Sure. Yeah, I was going to dedicate this episode to what exactly water is and some innovations, because it just happens that the Greek has been in the water business for decades, and maybe some new ways to think about it and methodologies and so on. And then, time permitting, we'll get also into the basics or rudiments of weather manipulation. So to begin with, I was curious if you give any credence to the atomic theory that water is composed of 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen?
Not at all. And how would you say it? Anything that's popular is not true, and what's true is not popular. People are not really aware. Let me just give a preface. The population is very, very trusting. So if you're a bus driver, a banker, a lawyer, construction worker, you're spending most of your waking hours going to work, coming back from work, and working, let's say. And if you're interested in, let's say, something in science or physics or history, it's natural that you go to people that are professionals and spend most of their waking hours doing those things, and you listen to what they say. Unfortunately, they're all false, and all those fields, for example, as well. So how do you start? Basic knowledge is not basic. It seems like, when you hear about esoteric things, those are actually basic. There's a lot of esoteric stuff on the internet. And that's when you actually delve into these topics in any field, you're like, well, wait a second, this is really basic stuff. And they're calling it esoteric, right? Or occult. So it said all that because it's so simple to break down what water is, that it's going to be like, oh, the Greek, he's talking some esoteric stuff, man. It's not right, because the question you posed seems very common. But I'm telling you that the opposite is true. And again, the professionals that are putting out information in the mainstream, they're relying on the people's ignorance, and the people, unfortunately, are very reliable, you see. So I have to preface that, because when I've spoken to plenty of quote-unquote academics in this, and they all agree with, let's say, my position. But after closing, let's say, the discussion is over, like, I still think water is a molecule. Yeah, it's like, whoa, but you were agreeing to, and so they cannot acknowledge what typically I bring forward. So I need to preface that because, folks, this is so basic. It's any subject that we might discuss, we'll always keep it so an 8-year-old can comprehend it and use it. But typically the discussions go very much into any subject, go into the history of that subject, right?
Mhm.
So if we were going to discuss anything, we should really start off when that started, where the information stream started. So a while back, I'd say in the late 1700s or so, yes, there was electricity back then, because I'm going to bring up that there was a guy in England, forgot his name, might have been not Crookes, but something similar to that. He put some electrodes in water, and because when you say electrodes in the 1700s, they think electricity is Thomas Edison. Electricity has always been around, guys and gals. They put some electrodes in water with some electrolyte like salts, and they noticed that hydrogen was coming off on one side and oxygen was coming off on the other side at a ratio of 2 to 1. So they went over to Cambridge or Oxford and showed this phenomenon or this experiment, and in 2 or 3 days they reviewed it and stated that water is H2O. Just 2 days of experimentation, 2 days of, right, very just rushed. And it stuck, right? And this experiment does work. If you start electrolyzing, or I call it decomposing water, you will get 2 parts hydrogen to 1 part oxygen. But what they don't tell you, here's the exclusion. This is what they exclude. It's not possible to take any given volume of water and break it down into hydrogen and oxygen completely. That process only works until you've reduced maybe 60%, 40 to 50% of the volume of water to that gas. Then the process stops. And you can't get any more hydrogen or oxygen out of the water. And that, if you continue that becomes deuterium and tritium, and as it changes the properties, the water changes. But so that's what's going on. So so it's kind of like if a loaf of bread is wheat, water, salt, and yeast, you can slice up the entire loaf of bread and serve it, right? No problem. But if water is H2O, you can only turn half of it into H2O, and the other half is what? What's left? What is that? How come it's not reacting anymore, right? So what I'm posing that because that's really the model of how the H2O came about, right? It's that proportion. Dihydrogen oxide. It's the most one of the most dangerous elements, right, in the world. You got to be careful. It's killed more people in history.
Heavy water, they call it.
Dihydrogen oxide. Yeah, sounds pretty dangerous, doesn't it? You got to watch out.
Well, if you drown in it, to mess with the public who don't know.
They call it dihydrogen oxide instead of water. It sounds dangerous. So anyway, that's one premise. The other premise is, let's start thinking along the lines that they present to us. And one of that be everything's made up of molecules and atoms, and how do those things behave? Let's look at all those everything's made of molecules and atoms. And you're like, well, you can say that to a degree, especially if you look at the model. It's very spurious. It was the planetary model, the electron spinning around, really fast, small electron spinning around a proton and its fat, lazy brother, the neutron, and all that. So we see that model, but we don't really ever see it. So when I started discussion with people, I said, there's you're familiar with organic material, like wood has grain, right? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. Wood has grain. Different hardwoods, softwoods, the grain structure varies. Do you know that if you look at metal under a microscope, you'll notice that it has grain also, and it sometimes looks like scales? And they're like, I didn't know that. No, metal's pretty shiny. Go look up on the internet what metals look like under a microscope. And it looks very much, a lot of metals look like wood. They have a grain structure, right? So that's something we can actually see. We can actually see with our eyes, with some aid of some equipment. By the way, the ancients had microscopes and telescopes all the way back also. So these things were analyzed, our real reality was analyzed. So as you keep looking, you'll notice that things are very similar, but you'll never find this atomic model. Now, we're going to be sticking with the water and not going into the atomic model, but when we do mention H2O, we harken back to the atomic model. So I'm not just fully discrediting it, but because it works well with gases, let's say, to a degree. Because we haven't brought up imponderable gases, and I don't know if we will. We don't have enough time to do that, versus ponderable.
Well, just how many states there are. I was curious about,
Sure, because they talk about the plasma state, but there's no one's talking about the imponderable. And let me just bring this up. A lot of the properties of water are imponderable. Like ponderable would be, look up what the word means to ponder something, and imponderable, I think it's with an M. It's the spelling. It means that it just goes beyond conception. So like a ponderable liquid or gas or fluid would be that when you put it in a suitable container with a suitable closure and a suitable seal, you come back at any time and it's still in the container, right? It hasn't leaked out. But an imponderable gas or an imponderable fluid, you would put it in a suitable container with a suitable closure and a suitable seal. Sounds like I've written papers on this, doesn't it? And the fluid or the gas has disappeared, or a good portion of it has penetrated the container and entered the surrounding environment. And you examine the container and the seal and the closure, and there's no breach. So how the hell did this liquid or gas go through 1-inch glass or 2-inch stainless steel and end up on the table? Because there's no hole in the container, right? So it's imponderable. For example, when you go up what they call outer space, that's another topic, there's gases up there. As a matter of fact, years ago I used to speak on how it smells like burning flesh. Not like roasting meat on a barbecue or a grill, but burning flesh, like when you throw an entire animal in fire or whatever. It's very stinky. And I was saying this for years. And then recently, some people that have been up at that height, high altitude, low orbit, say the same thing. I got that from ancient references, by the way. So how did the ancients know that? But they were trying to, it's not a vacuum. Space is actually pretty dense. If you read some of Tesla's material, he said you really can't go to the moon because when you start gaining, once you get beyond the thin atmosphere, you'll notice you'll hit something that's denser than steel. So that's kind of like a lot in the speeches that you hear about people talking about you really can't leave this realm. They'll just grab you and say you can only leave with permission, but that's another discussion again. But they try to capture some gases that are up there in containers, and when they brought them down, they were gone. And this happens repeatedly with several things. If you, just to skip around, imponderable gases would be, if you're familiar with someone called Walter Russell, he wrote the Universal One. He played around with the periodic table. And if you look at his spiral, or it's more of a meandering periodic table, it's very intuitive versus the modern Mendeleev style.
I see it.
Also
yeah, it looks like the Nautilus or that Fibonacci.
Yeah, more like meandering, not really a full spiral. It's Mendeleev's original that they've adapted now, which is very unintuitive, which is like a grid type chart. Well, Walter Russell in the Universal One, he shows about 5 or 6 elements above hydrogen, which is number 1. And the reason why those aren't, he's discovered several elements through thought experiments, and it was proven. They were proved out. And there's still some missing elements, by the way. The reason they haven't been proved out and put on display is because of this reason. They're imponderable, and they can be generated through water, by the way. And that's a big discussion again. So,
is there a difference between, is that the same as what they call plasma?
No, I have a hard time with plasma discussions because what you describe as plasma, I don't describe as plasma.
Right, it's too vague.
It's too vague. It's kind of like a ghost theory. What's a ghost? Do ghosts exist? Yes, they do. But what are they? Right? Someone's going to have to get in there and tighten that subject up, but I know Robert Temple talks a lot about it. And also,
George Wiseman says that that's the true fourth phase of water, not the gel state, because that's a different molecular structure. But of course, he's still applying the old hat mindset. I mean, conventional theory about the molecular shape.
Sure. No, the molecular shape. Okay, now let's just go back to the molecular shape. I think we've diverted. Molecules and atoms and all that are compressible. You could look up water at 39 degrees Fahrenheit or 40 degrees Celsius is not compressible. They state that it is, but it's actually just a factor of error. It's actually not compressible at all at that temperature. Also, when objects are warm, they expand, and when they're cooled, they contract. Now, water will expand when it's warm, but when it cools and when it gets to 39 or 40 degrees Celsius, it stabilizes its dimension. That's where you get 1 gram is 1 cubic for 1 cubic centimeter standard. But as you lower the temperature below 4 degrees Celsius or 39 Fahrenheit, it starts to expand again, and it expands greatly. And I have a theory on that, which is very similar to what Victor Schauberger mentioned, was the reason it does that is so ice can float and protect anything living in the water from the impending cold on the surface. Because, the reason you build igloos if you live near the North Pole is because if you're in an igloo, it won't go below 32 degrees, right? So, the walls at least. So it could be minus 40 outside. You'll be 70 degrees warmer, which is not too bad. So the water does not follow any of the molecular properties of any other element or material. And it's very hard, by the way, to encounter elements in their pure form. Everything is a mixture of some sort or a compound, right? Anyone knows that if you go mining for metals or minerals, they're never in pure form.
It's an ore.
They always have to be refined. It's always an ore. Yeah. Now, the only thing is the U.S. is really, really, really fortunate that, especially right now, there's no discussion of it. Oil that's being retrieved from underground near Montana right now, Montana, is almost good enough to put in your engine.
Oh,
That's
it's that
how clean
light?
it is. It's that light and no sulfur. Yeah.
We had oil. I did oil and gas for 11 years, literally like touching the wells, getting shakeouts. We call it a shakeout when you open the valve and actually get the crude and see like the cut. Sometimes there's water with it. Actually, anyway, but
cut.
Some like what these formations were called, which I'm sure you have a better name for it or whatever, know more, but we would call them depletion drive, or these high profile wells that you don't have to force to flow. They would deplete till they would drive till they deplete, like 4-Isle Dome. Anyway. But it would give you a really, what we called in the industry, a light blue condensate, which people are so used to and think of, a black substance coming out, like your, crude oil. But some places, I remember there's a well in Crowley too that would just have it looked like rubbing alcohol coming out. And it would have a layer on top of the water. And then at 4-Isle Dome, it was a very light blue condensate.
Yeah.
And if you poured it out, if you got a shakeout into a bucket instead of like your graduated cylinder to go bring it back to the office, you could dump a shakeout into a 5-gallon bucket from that well, put it out in the morning, come back at noon, and it just be all evaporated. Anyway, just to further testify.
It's that clean. In other words, it's that clean. Yeah, and people don't know. You can still look it up. The U.S. produces still 99% or 90% of the world's oil, if not better than that. But anyway, but even that, in a sense, is still a compound. I just had to bring that up because I always cross paths with people in oil and gas. I like to stay away from oil and gas. It's absolutely not necessary. 1 drop of water has got more energy than a barrel of oil. Right? So
Stanley Myers is trying to harp on that, right?
There's a lot of people doing it.
Oh.
It's actually, but that was a while back, and so let's go back to the water.
Yeah.
There's so many thoughts because water and oil go hand in hand in energy as well. But you see, the water, in the way that it behaves, it has none of the tendencies of anything that has a molecule or an atom. Now, here's the other thing. People say, well, here they took a photo of the water molecule, Greek, and I'm like, well, no, that's photo of a water molecule with glucose added to it. Well, here's another photo of the water molecule, and that's one with a silica added to it. You can't. They start showing the public this 108, 102 degree, 113 degree molecule, but it's never just water. It's always something else added to it. So it's the same experiment. When they're trying to define a magnetic pole, they put a piece of iron. They do this in the third grade. They put iron shavings under a magnet on the plate, and you see the field lines. Those are not. That's not what magnetic field lines really look like. You're turning all those little iron shavings into little magnets now. So you're just looking at more magnets. You're not using another. You're not using a contrary reference or something to show you to objectify what a magnetic field is. So anyway, what we've proceeded on is that water is independent of all their molecular and atomic theory and structure. And we've landed on that. I say we, the corporate we, whoever else finds this out. It's important that we stay together and work together because ultimately there hasn't been much water research since the late 1700s. So I encourage people to keep looking at these things and thusly. Imagine you get into a field where only a week of research was done on it 300 years ago. How easy or simple and gratifying would it be to pick up that research now and continue it? Remember,
is it any admitted
300 years ago,
research?
it would be so easy to do. Go ahead.
Is it? No,
So
I'm just thinking. Is it any admitted research? You get what I'm saying? Like I
None
guess
of
for
it.
public consumption. You know, I think people try and
no,
invent
there
stuff in their
isn't.
garage, and then well, Stanley
Yeah.
Myers, for example. You know, he's the only guy I know of. I use him as a touchstone. It's like he tried visiting all this, water again, and and then they whack him.
People-
Yeah.
Yeah, supposedly. I think there's more signs that he went underground, but that's fine.
Okay, perhaps. Look, I don't know. Yeah, I'm limited
I
knowledge.
don't
That's why
know
we.
either. I don't know either, but that's not enough of a reason to whack someone. But I guess, a lot of the stuff, you've heard of people getting whacked for free energy devices and all that, and, 100 mile per gallon carburetors and all that. I think that stopped in the 1990s, 1998 preferably, I would say. Like right now, for example, a lot of the stuff that you see on the internet, and remember, the worse, the more severe the conspiracy theory, the more true it is, because they need new conspiracy theories because all the old ones could come true. So I think stuff that people are putting out now would have gotten you whacked 30 years ago. Yeah, I agree with the getting whacked scenario. But again, I'm encouraging people to look at these things on their own and start working with water with a different mindset. Again, because how easy or simple would it be to continue the research if only 3 days to a week was done 300 years ago and was just put aside? There's a lot of people out there that are talking about different types of water, structured water, this and that, but guess what? They never bring up they don't emphasize these unique properties of water that sets it apart from everything else, and they refer to it again as H2O. For me, that signals that they're just add-ons to the current standard, which is absolutely wrong. Right? They're just basically they're buying like a 30-year-old Toyota Corolla for $2,000 and putting $5,000 rims on it. That's what they're doing, in my opinion. Right? You get they're ghetto.
Yeah,
to me, that's like ghetto shit they're doing. That's not real research. But anyway, people, there's a lot of believers there. When I start speaking with clients and other people, like, oh yeah, I studied easy water and this and third state of water. I'm like, oh my gosh, oh please, just stop. It's ghetto stuff. So anyway,
Right. But if you were to conjecture what the true, definition of water would be, would it have something to do with a communication system or maybe an interface between the spirits and the matter world?
all of that, sure, all of that. It could be anything you want. Most things emerge from water. For example, let's go back to, let's say, some biblical references. There's creation, but water was already there, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's what's interesting, So, I mean, the biblical creation is not a true creation, it's a remodeling, but still, water seems to have been one of the elements or one of the materials, let's say. And you know, that is precursor to what we consider a manipulation of matter. One thing I want to just throw in is Vita Austin. Look up her stuff. She would probably be one of the most advanced people in water research in toto, meaning overall, like tagging on to the question that you brought up, Daniel, just now, with the more on the spiritual, meaning, is it spirit? Do you remember there were spirit cameras, and if you, back in the day, you know, because she's doing hydroglyphs where water communicates, right?
Yeah, I had her
You
on
can
my
look
channel.
up her
Great.
method. Yeah, you had.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
She's a hero of mine. I would definitely look at her work as an adjunct to what I'm saying.
Because it's repeatable.
It's repeatable, yes. Yep. And it doesn't even have to be that technical. You don't need petri dishes and all that stuff. You can do it on anything. There's also like the idea, you know, the vacuum tube that was pre-transistor. I think his name was Crooks. When you asked them why they were designing it, they said, we're making this to communicate with the outer world, you know, the spirit world. So all of these researchers, you know, for example, most of the scientific things that we consider to be breakthroughs were done by occultists, not scientists, for example, or, you know, not people working in the technical field, so people outside of the field. So that's why my main encouragement is like they did less than a week's of research on calling it H2O 300 years ago. Let's continue it. It's very simple, but not the way the other people are doing it. So, like Vita Austin would be one I would definitely endorse to look at.
And speaking about her, maybe could you speculate over a mystery that even she hasn't been able to answer, which is, do you believe that the water has its own mind or memory, or that it taps into like a surrounding morphogenetic field or something like that?
Yes, all of that. Do you understand the idea of simulation theory? We're in a video game, an interesting video game, right? And
so they're not exclusive.
Yeah, like video game designers always say, in order to have a successful video game, you have to make it easy to play but difficult to master, right? So this is what we're in. And also the idea of viewing it that way is that you have a loose mind, but not so loose that when you lean over your brains fall out. But you know, you keep things contained and understand that pretty much anything is possible within proper observation. Remember, the other thing that I say is we're all in a dream state, and there's two dream states that everyone is in. One is when you're dreaming and you're engrossed in the dream and you're having this dream experience. And the other state is when you're having that experience, but you tell yourself this is just a dream. You see, those are the two main dream states. Then, of course, there's the nightmare, but the nightmare is also in that realm, too. You have the nightmare where fully engrossed, and you have a nightmare where you're fully engrossed and you tell yourself this is just a dream. So I'm telling people constantly, you're just in a dream. It doesn't mean negate it. Engage in it. Be engrossed in it, but it's just a dream. So what is possible in dreams? This is what's possible here. And one other add-on to that is, remember, when you're dreaming, you're typically in a beyond hypnagogic state. You're actually unconscious, REM, all that other stuff they used to describe it. You could be traveling the universe in your dream, but in another reality, or in reality, let's say, you're laying down in bed or sleeping. You're not moving at all, right? So this is what's going on. We're in that, and water shows us that, because it does not comply to any observation that's been put forth publicly. But then we have to look at how water, like what Vita Austin shows, and the reason why I say go look at her stuff, the takeaway from me is not that there are hydroglyphs, is that the water is reacting to pretty much everything you put forward to it. It's showing you everything, mental, physical, and right, past, future. You see? So this to me, that shows we're in a dream state. We're in a dream, and water is, in a sense, a factor of that dream state.
So it's both it both has its own mind, but we also influence it. I mean, it also taps into the surrounding fields, so they're not.
Yes. Well, remember, yeah, fields are nothing more than things in motion that we don't see, non-material. Like Philip K. Dick said, one of the things is, they asked him, what is reality? And he said, reality is something that when you stop believing in it, it's still there. Doesn't go away. And that's the reality of water. What they do is they've overlaid what it is, and actually they've completely discounted it, put it into a chemical category, right? So, which is fine, because the materialists see, pure materialism is what atheism really is. It's not the absence of God. It's just negation of anything that's not material, right? That one person who hammers on that a lot, I don't endorse him, is though I wouldn't say go ahead and dive into all of his stuff, even though most of it is pretty good, is Ken Wheeler. He looks like Uncle Fester with tattoos. So when you land on his page, you know who it is visually. He talks a lot about these ancient Kali and Pali and theories. He brings forward ancient philosophies that are valid. But I would say that to bring it home, you must be familiar with the observations that you have. Like, for example, Zan brought up earlier, the real funky essence of good petroleum, or good high quality extracted petroleum, is very different than what people imagine. When you say
Unbelievable,
that.
and I'm very fortunate for all that experience. And then you have stuff all the way at the end of the spectrum where it comes out a star, and we have to hit it with steam. These steams in Mississippi, we had a lot of that stuff. But I mean, not to go off on a jag about that, but yeah, man, you will get like light blue, look like you put a damn I don't know, a drop of methylene blue in your water. I mean, it's
Yeah, it'll settle out and then evaporate. Yeah, it's really so that just let's give it a little thought there. Corn oil comes from corn. Olive oil comes from olives, so on and so forth. Petroleum, petro means rock. It's rock oil. Another way to think of it is mineral oil, and it's actually labeled as such.
it is
when it's refined.
We have big drums
Yeah.
of that. Yes.
Yes, so it comes from rock. So how does it do that? So the water that, we're on a water planet. They say the 70% water that we have on the earth is surface water. When you start going underneath, it maintains that 70%, if not more. But you have certain areas that are completely, what would you say, petrified, all rock. But you will find more water underground, especially fresh water, in that essence. So we're basically, that also, when you understand that, you understand the nature of earthquakes. It's funny how they tell you earthquakes are actually tectonic plates, moving, and you have fault zones where the plates, are divided. But what causes that movement, right? It can't be just thermal expansion, because we know the thermal coefficients of things, it's not that much.
Well, the mainstream, and they say it's convection, this convection thing from the Earth's mantle. That's the mainstream crap that they tell us. Why don't you enlighten us?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can go after that. If the Earth's core, they say that the gravity comes from the molten iron core. Well, there's something called the Curie point, and that's when something changes its properties, and especially with iron, the Curie point of iron is below molten iron. It ceases to become magnetic. If you have molten iron, put a magnet near it, it won't attract or repel, however you want to look at it. And so it's impossible that molten iron would be magnetic. So a lot of the stuff that they put out is completely contradictory. But that's all right. We already know that. Anyone here knows that we're being fed. The mainstream was what I call the mushroom people. You keep them in the dark and feed them bullshit constantly, right? So, so what's happening is these plates are actually on hydro. It's a hydrodynamic. It's the motion of water underground that creates the movement of the plates. And of course, it's the water above ground is connected to the water below. There's experiments that can be done with light water, sweet water and salt water. You'll find them in the book Edidarpa. which
Oh,
is
yeah.
Aphrodite spelled
Yes.
backwards.
And Kentucky,
Yeah.
that cave, the rooster something cave. Daniel turned me on to that.
Good, good. Yeah, that's it's amazing when you find things. Okay, like years ago, if you had a really a factual, true story, and you took it to mainstream publishers, they said this is a great story, but we won't let you publish it as fact. You can publish it as fiction. That's out of DARPA. So, which is Aphrodite spelled backwards. If I'm not pronouncing it clearly enough to find it. So we're looking at, again, without getting any more into what water is, I would finalize by saying when you look at the periodic table and you look at elements in their refined state and subjective isotopes, I would say water itself is an element. It should be considered an element, not considered a chemical compound. Just because it's fooled everyone, how many times have you heard that our senses, it's not, your senses don't really fool you, by the way. But we're told that, and we've been fooled with information by disinformists that are misinforming the public. A disinformist knows they're putting out false information. The misinformed are those that receive it and consider it to be factual, right? So most people are misinformed by disinformists. And it's all because of a paycheck, right? So it's interesting when you try to, in public would be two or more people around an academic. Boy, it's funny to see how they defend all the falsities that they put out. So without getting any more into the water, because like Daniel says, I've been working with water now for decades, and I could say we have the most advanced water research and however else you want to put it in the world, bar none. And yes, you haven't heard of us, and you probably won't, because that's just how it is. Just like, for example, the most advanced, let's say, propulsion systems are not on the internet, right? People who do that, they're not. You won't find the most advanced, the best of the best of the best, will not be found. And I sound pretty arrogant saying that, but we could back it up. So without getting into more, let's say, twisting around the, this road of what's right and what's wrong, what water is and what it isn't, is I strictly suggest that people use their senses when they perceive water and start doing their own observations. And it's not the senses that are fooling you. Your senses are actually filters, meaning that, we only see 1 or 2% of the spectrum of light. We only hear 1 or 2% of the spectrum of sound. Now imagine taste, right? There are animals that can taste things that you and smell things that you can't. So our senses are actually filtering our environment. And also the senses are not what's really perceiving. You don't see with your eyes, you see with your brain. You don't hear with your ears. Your brain does it for you. That's the main, it's just a probe. The taste is the same thing. I've known people who have been in car accidents where their head goes through the windshield, they recover, and they've lost their sense of taste. Could you imagine that, Zan? Not being able to taste food? That would be, oh my gosh, the two worst things would be, well, the worst thing for a man is to have his, cut off. Right?
Food and sex, man. That's why,
yeah.
I'm trying to be wealthy. I want good food and good sex, yeah.
Yeah, the two things. That would be like having your schlong cut off, why live? There's no reason to live anymore. I've just got to throw that in. That it might be slightly insidious for some.
I think we're all in agreement.
So, and it's in the brain. But what I'm saying is this person lost their sense of taste and smell because of the brain damage, right? He still has the olfactory the actual tools.
Glands, yeah.
Right? Yeah, it's kind of like your computer. Take out the CPU. Now, how good is your monitor, keyboard, mouse, and all that? How good is that? Nothing. So this is what's going on. So we basically, do you have to rewire anything? I mean, that's what's being fooled, is the mind. Spirit is being fooled. So again, there's no way to deny what we've said here about water without getting technical, and what to do. But by just having people observe it themselves, and I'm saying true observation, which is simple.
Yeah. One of those observations includes, following the trail of how there are interior oceans, and the fact that the hydrological cycle doesn't account for
No, not at all.
all the mass of water.
Yeah, here, let's do this. The next time on the hydrological cycle, that's like a Mickey Mouse, worse than Disneyland. And they show you that Mickey Mouse geometry is that way because of the water molecules. So one thing reinforces the other, right? The fallacies. Hydrological cycle. Okay, the next time there's an impending rainstorm, do me a favor and stand under an overhang where you know you'll be protected from the rain. And I would like for you to watch the clouds moving in, right? Well, you'll notice as if you can identify, that's where the storm is coming from. Sometimes it'll rain, the clouds are just whited out and you can't see it. But if you do see the clouds coming in, you'll notice that these big fluffy clouds, because the chemtrail clouds don't make rain. What will happen is the cloud will start to flatten out on the bottom and get really dark gray, and then the water is ejected from the cloud. That's what most people would see. But what is actually going on is the water is created on that gray flat layer. And there's no water in those clouds any more than there is in the ambient humidity. Anyone will tell you that is a pilot. You can fly through the clouds. If you're in a rainstorm and the skin of your plane, your wings, and the body of your plane is getting pummeled, all you have to do is raise up and go into the cloud. It's suddenly dry. There's no water in the cloud. They've taught you that the cloud is this giant sponge or a giant bucket. A quarter inch of rain, which is a good rain on an area that's 10 square miles, is 1 billion barrels of water, right? Do you know how much that weighs? So with 42 gallons in a barrel, right? Times 8. So that's a tremendous amount of weight. Now, the only time there's any water in the air is with fog, and fog is always descending, right? And when it evaporates, it ascends. So there's no water in those clouds. What's actually happening is the water is being created on the bottom of the cloud, and that's sometimes where it comes from a plasma layer. Again, that nefarious term. But water is, there was a group in Israel a while back, a water research. They had lasers, they had satellites, they had all the equipment to figure out what forms rain. And they said that it forms in a few nanoseconds under the cloud. They don't know how, and they erased that article from the internet. The typical reason rain forms is that dust particles accumulate water from the air, from the humidity, right? And that's what forms the drops. Now, that's impossible, because that would mean that when rain would form, the humidity would be extracted from the air, and thus the humidity would drop in your ambient environment prior to the rainfall. That's not true. What happens is the humidity keeps increasing as it goes to rainfall. You see? So it can't be formed by dust. So it's actually instantly formed from ex nihilo, from nothing.
It's a form of induction. So I think you liken it to sweating once.
The same with the body. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the, let's say, cross-section of human skin on the internet, put in cross-section of human skin, you'll see there's these sweat ducts, and there's no connection to any part of the body. The sweat duct is like a cul-de-sac. It's completely isolated from any other function of the body, and the water forms in there. And there's interstitial spaces that are so tight, meaning the tightness between the cells around the sweat duct. Interstitially, do not allow for water to penetrate into the duct. So exactly the way sweat forms, exactly the way rain forms. Also, when you look at, for example, uptake of water into plants, roots, all plant roots are hydrophobic. What does that mean?
It repels,
Yeah, it repels the water. So go pull out a plant, onion or whatever. There's a weed. Some weeds are very robust. Clean off all the dirt. Let the roots dry a little. Then approach it with a spray bottle. Mist some water on it. You'll notice that the water beads on the roots just like water would bead on a freshly waxed hood of a car, which makes it hydrophobic. It doesn't absorb like a sponge. There is no absorption. It's all induction. Yeah, this is kind of crazy stuff. We've kind of gone, meeting and speaking on these sonic events, I call them sonic events. We brought this up before, but to go in depth, it's really you're going to have to trick your mind yourself into what you've been taught to believe just doesn't work. So why keep believing it? One thing that I do constantly is show people how little they know about what they believe in, right? And if none of this is esoteric. And one thing the academics do is, oh, we did all this research. I said, well, can I do that too? No, you need a $14 million lab to do that. It's very, very expensive equipment. Notice how they always do that? And if you want the information, you have to come to us. You can't do it yourself because we have all the specialized stuff. Total BS. Total BS. But by the way, but here's the thing, I keep saying it's total BS. You do need bulls, which are expensive, or cows, to produce BS, which are expensive. Ask a city boy to produce some BS. You can't do it. He doesn't have a cow. So in a way, they're right. To produce BS, you do need specialized equipment. Right? To produce bovine excrement, you need bovines. How many people do you know that have bovines laying around or walking around? I don't. Very few. So again, it's all specialized. Even their bullshit is specialized. So anyway, go ahead. Let's continue. What else do you guys want to? Did we satisfy the question? We kind of went around and around the bush. I don't know if we got enough penetration there, but yeah.
Well, since you compared it to the human body, the conventional model says that we are 70% water by weight, but 99% by molecule count, which
yes.
Of course is faulty, but there must be something to it. Would you say that it's accurate to call us like walking, crystals of water?
Yes, but it's also, let's go back to what we just said, it's variable. Are we 99% because we can produce water, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it can go up and down quite a bit. Yeah, but yeah, it's not how much we are in a static or let's just say scalar composition, which means it's the same everywhere. We're actually producing water, right? So it's variable. Mm-hmm. But yeah, mostly water. Mostly everything is water. You can use water to produce here. I'll give another thing. I went up to a mine, a secret mine near Globe, Arizona, and it was secret because the amount of gold that was there. The nuggets were really large, like the size of walnuts. Now, when you talk about gold nuggets, they're usually very small. But when you have one that you could, if you drop on your foot and you wonder if you broke a toe, that's a pretty serious gold mine. And they got all the nuggets pretty quick. And then they went after doing some leaching. And I said, well, I could produce almost just as, with your leach pond, I could produce just as much gold from that spring that's 10 miles south down the road, that water spring, because the energy of the gold is in there. So I basically made a cell where I took the water from the spring. Now, when they were doing the leach pond, by the way, they had this brownish powder, looked like a light color, light roast coffee espresso kind of grind. And they leached that out, and there was a percentage of gold that came out. As long as it's like a tenth of an ounce per ton, it's worth doing. So I took some of the water and I put it in a cell that I built, and overnight I had this precipitant on the bottom of the cell. I took it out and dried it, and it was identical to what they were using, the ore that they were using in their leach pond. Sounds like a magic trick, right? And I just pulled that out of the water, but it wasn't in the water. They've tested the water. There's no gold in the water at all. So that's another discussion. So these are things that are possible. Now, don't contact me and what kind of a cell, how did you build it, or whatever. Don't contact me on that. You figure it out on your own. Just think about it. It'll come to you. Let's just put it that way. But we'll get into that, because if we start getting into all this stuff, we could talk about for the next 4 hours just talking about how to make the cell and what the cell is. It is an electrical device, very simple. You make it from junk you find on garbage day on the side of the road sometimes. Mm-hmm. Just like the weather equipment. So,
one of the most under-discussed but actionable, sub-branches of this, topic is the primary water, which, glossed over, but this would, if you would subscribe to this, then, and plus look at all the evidence, for example, all the volcanic vapors is a example of that, and also the oases and all the hot springs are also, and there are certain wells that have run for thousands of years, and many other such, wells of primary water that form on crests of mountains that would never have enough catchment for them to have such a yield, even accounting for the aquifers and so on. But do you believe that with this, according to what Stephen Rice, the pioneer of this, and also was endorsed by Aldous Huxley and others, but do you believe him when he says that you can turn any desert or dry area into a verdant one using this deep drilling?
But I wouldn't do it. Yes, you can go deep drilling. Right now, recently an article came up about Iran, Persia having to move the population out of, I think, Tehran, because they're running out of water because of poor management. That's impossible to run out of water. That would be just an ignorant thing. All they have to do is drill deeper. They have to drill so deep that they're going to have to divert some of their resources from other industries to do it. But it can be done. You know what I mean? Instead of trying to build a stealth fighter jet or something, or make guns, or whatever, coffee machines, whatever, or cars, divert some of that into making larger, more robust well casings, because you're going to have to go down into, the deeper you go, the more robust the casing and the drill has to be. And just keep drilling away, and you'll find water, and you don't even have to pump it to the surface.
Exactly.
It's everywhere. Yeah, it's everywhere. I think there are only a few examples have been done about primary water. They were 8-inch bores. I don't think you could get 10,000, 20,000 feet smaller than 8-inch bores, too small. And the water came up on its own to the surface at quite a rate. I think it was like 2,000, 3,000 gallons per minute. So, yeah. That's a fact to be explored, but it's not. It's kind of like the credit system. We all have infinite credit, and they tell you have bad credit, so they can on the backside take it from you and tell you you weren't approved. Yeah, we can get into the money system one day, boy oh boy, and I'll show you everything that I'm telling you is in their codes, and no one knows. There's no attorney or banker that knows what we could talk about that any 8-year-old could look up. And the reason why I say there's no attorney or banker that knows how the money works is because if you know how the money works and you work at an institution and you bring it up, you'll be fired. So there might be a banker or a lawyer that knows how it works for about a week or two, and then they get booted. So
same reason why primary water never took off.
Yeah, there's more. Again, let's say it's like a video game. Is anyone going to play a video game where nothing gets broken, blown up, or anyone dies?
Sometimes.
No one's going to play a video game like that, right? Why would you make a construct? Even the Matrix talked about that. When you make it too perfect, no one wants to participate.
Right. But and another underrated practice when it comes to water is the dowsing of it, which is the kinesthetics or side of remote viewing. Getting feedback from your own, from your body, but that is dictated from like a universal mind. And there have been many people that have detected thousands of wells this way, and companies and even governments have sometimes utilized it. It's just that it's not mediatized. What's your opinion on that?
Oh yeah, well, you could look up dowsing, DOWSING. Just from dowsing myself for decades now, the rods and the tools that you use are to show to others the indication that what you're looking for is indicated, right? When you do it long enough, you don't even need those anymore. You could literally just feel it and say, this is where it is. And it's not just for water or gas or finding things underground. You could find your car keys that way as well, right?
So the instruments are just there to amplify your incremental movements.
And it's an indicator. So when it's a witness. That's all it is. Because sometimes going strictly on a feeling, most people haven't tuned on when a feeling pings the thought or pings the identity of what you're looking for. You're not too sure, but when you see the rods crossing or diverting, you have that physical indicator, right? Just like you would have a gauge reading.
So the rods have been the best for you because there's also the Y-shaped branch of the pendulum. So you would advocate for the rods.
I advocate the rods because they're the simplest. The pendulum actually Which is interesting, with any kind of thinking will turn a pendulum, and sometimes you feel like you are inclined to do it yourself, the slightest hand movement. But the rods require quite a bit of motion. You've seen rods where even if holding your hands in a stable manner, the rods, swing with quite a force. I don't know if you've ever seen any videos or done it yourself, right?
Yeah. Less room for error.
It's great. Yeah, they have a higher tolerance, let's say, for that. Yeah, but you can look that up. That's a big field to get into. That again shows that we're in tapping into the source code. That's
And have you dug up some wells this way that were that were defied by radar?
Well, I really stopped promoting this when I once went out to Safford, Arizona. It's very windy there. The grass doesn't grow more than a half-inch tall. That's how windy it is. And there was a top of a hill, and a rancher was like, I heard you do dowsing, I'll pay you for it, come out here. I go out there with a group of people, and he shows me the plot of the land where I'd walk around, and I come right back to where this Toyota pickup was parked, where the plan of the land was, the plot. And I said, the water's right here, it's at 10,000 feet. And he just said, God damn it. He got angry and walked around the truck twice, and he says, let me show you something. And I got the welling company, they charged me $2,500. They showed me the X was exactly where I said at 10,000 feet, using sonic equipment and whatever they used. So after that point, I was like, this is boring. I don't need to promote myself. Excuse me.
But in order to get
I don't need
to
to promote it anymore. Yeah, go ahead.
But to get to that depth, you used yes and no technique, right? To ask it, is it at this depth?
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
Does she love me? Does she love me not? Does she love me? Does she love me not? You watch the rods go in and out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you use that as a metaphor.
Right.
You can ask it anything. But you can't ask it anything because it has to be within the spectrum of fate. Can I say that? Of probability. You can't be too specific. Like the genie, make 3 wishes. It's worse than that, because how many wishes can you make with dowsing rods? It's not just 3. You keep going, right? But because it's so open, you have to be more specific. So the genie says, what would you like? You got 3 wishes, or whatever. I want ice cream. And it gives you strawberry ice cream. You're like, oh shit, I'm allergic to strawberry. I should have asked for chocolate. Right? So you can't be specific enough. So the more specific you are, the better it is. How specific can you be? And in order to be specific, it takes knowledge, technical knowledge, what have you.
Right. Do you believe that when water, when we ingest water and it's slushy in our stomach, and then what do you think renders it like into a gel state?
It's biological reaction. What renders the hydroglyphs that, not the freezing, but the hydroglyphs that Beta Austin displays. Remember, she says don't freeze it all the way, right? It's a reaction. How does the water form an image? Well, if it's forming an image, it can actually change its physical self. Let me just give more of an example. Young children drink a lot of water. Sometimes as a game and jump up and down, you feel it slushing around in your stomach. Anyone can do it. And within a minute or two, the water's still there, but you jump up and down and there's no motion, right? It's turned into a gel. Yeah. All the moisture in the body and plants is a gel form. Have you ever pierced the side of a stalk of a plant? It comes out in a gel form, and then suddenly it starts, once enough air and light is exposed to, a few seconds, it just runs down the plant. We're not talking about sap now. Just any moisture, light moisture in a plant. You'll see that the water in your eye is a gel.
And part of the blood that acts as a pump. Yeah.
Itself, yeah. Now the blood, right? The heart is not a pump. The heart is a braking mechanism.
No.
It's actually the heavy arteries and veins actually coiled and twisted together like a rope form the organ. You can untwist the heart, by the way, unravel it.
Yes,
and,
I've seen that recently. Yes.
Yeah, and it's a braking mechanism, and that's proven by people that subject themselves to experimentation that have something called a pacemaker. When they speed up the pacemaker and the pulse rate increases, the blood flow slows down. when they slow down the pacemaker and relax the subject, the blood flow increases. That's a really good pump, isn't it?
Mm.
No.
Plus, the blood
Yeah.
enters the heart with the same speed it exits, so it can't be a mechanical pump. It has to be
Well,
much more.
it's an inertial thing. Yeah. Well, again, depending on the pulse rate. So a heart attack, in simple terms, is: have you ever ridden like a golf cart or a '67 Chevy with drum brakes all around in the rain?
Mhm.
That's kind of too specialized, but an automobile with drum brakes, 4 drum brakes in the rain, you hit the brakes and it feels like for a moment you're going faster and the car's not stopping, right? So a heart attack is nothing more than failure. The braking mechanism is failing, right? That's
Right.
why years ago I've been telling people for decades, a heart attack, you need to take the victim and throw them in an ice bath. Guess what they've been doing for the past 5 years now? I took them anyway. I don't want to take credit for anything, but once you understand these things, the solutions are very, very simple, right?
Right. But would you say that there is such a thing as structured water, meaning just, its constituents are more aligned or more where they should be, more capable of storing memory and so on, and
Yeah,
that
I
is
think
disturbed by
display.
5G and sort?
No, I think 5G is different. It's very specific. Structured water, again, Vita Austin. If she puts a photograph of her mom on the water and she frosts up the dish and it shows resemblance of that photograph, isn't that a structure?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But,
but structuring the water molecule is nonsense. But that's
Okay, but-
okay. Yeah.
More coherent, more conducive to doing its job.
I would say so, whatever that job would be, but it's always going to be benevolent. For every lab there is to make water better, there's 300 labs to turn it into a toxin.
Mhm.
And they can't do it. They will turn it into a toxin momentarily, then it switches back to being benevolent. It's kind of like those, the 1960s photograph with the protesters, the National Guard is at the college with the rifles and they're putting flowers, daffodils in the barrels of the guns. Have you seen those photos? That's water.
Mhm. And is there merit to spinning the water in like a vortex, maybe counterclockwise? Supposedly, it's supposed to make it like a negative charge, as opposed to the 90-degree angles that it travels in the piping.
Again, that's pretty hyped up stuff. Again, you put a photograph of your mom on there and frost it in the image. So, do you expect the water to be spinning? Now, the spinning, there is validity to that to enliven and enrich the water, just like if you're got a chocolate chip cookie recipe and you gather all those ingredients and mix them together, you're not done. You got to put them in the oven, right? Bake them. So if you want to, that's how you increase the quality. Actually, baking the recipe, the mixture of the chocolate chip cookies dough is actually increasing its quality by baking it, because now you have a final product that you can eat without getting sick, right? For example. So if you spin water in an ovoid container under a vacuum, not open air, and still maintaining that vacuum, have a good portion of CO2 gas in there, you will enrich the quality of the water to the point where whoever drinks that will feel like they just got some really good news.
So that, it's as simple as that, and maybe 4 degrees centigrade, right?
And approaching, if not at that temperature, yes, which is the healthiest, let's say, in air quotes, the best state water could be in. That's when water is its densest. Above or below 4 degrees Celsius or 39 degrees Fahrenheit, water starts to expand and is loosened up and is not as revealing to what its power is. So, yeah, coincidentally, 99% of the time, if not all the health departments in the world, check to see that your fridge is between 39 and 40 degrees Fahrenheit, 41 the highest. So most of your refrigerators, are at 4 degrees Celsius or 39 anyway.
Yeah, it seems more than a coincidence.
Yeah,
But-
because everything is wet. So.
But so you would ascribe more like merit to the ovoid shape, but
Yeah.
because it spends more time in it than just.
Okay, let's get into the shape. Movement. So everything in nature is moving. That's what keeps this construct going, is difference of potential. You'll never strike a perfect balance. Just like if references. Let's things, even things that are static, are not static. For example, if you show someone in the Bureau of Standards, this is exactly 1 meter. They have a platinum rod, or 1 yard, or defining an inch or a pound. They have these reference standards in government offices. That's because they put it together with their finest equipment, highest tolerances. But you might make an even finer way to measure it and show that their meter reference or their gram is a little bit under or over, right? So that shows motion even with static things, right? For example, there was a company here in Arizona. This is before lasers were more common for making holes. They went to the machinist show in Japan, and Hitachi, Mitoyoyo, or whatever, I'm not pronouncing it right. They made the world's smallest nano drill bit. It's a mechanical drill bit. And it was in 3 boxes. You had to wear a special face mask to view it. So this company in Arizona bought the drill bit. It was like $30,000. Microscope to see it, and a microscopic machine to put it in. A year later, they arrive back to the show, give them their drill bit back, says, "Why are you giving our drill bit back?" And says, "We want to show you the hole that we drilled in your drill bit using our drill bit." Right? So, anyway, so even these are static objects, they still show motion by increasing what we can do with them. Right?
Right.
So everything is like that, but let's go back to your question, which I forgot. I'm really good at doing diversions like that. But your question was about motion and ovoid, and stagnation. So let's say you have a square container, rectangular with corners. The corners are stagnant. Anyone that gets one of those smoke alarm detectors, in the instructions it tells you put 8 to 12 or 14 inches away from the corner because the smoke doesn't go there. If you've ever been in a building that had a fire, if you look at the corners, you can still see the color of the paint, right?
Right.
So the corners are stagnation. Nothing goes in and out of them, or likes to. Hint there if you're ventilating a room. So let's put it in a container that doesn't have corners. By the way, most of your liquids come in containers that have corners in them, don't they?
Yeah, for storage.
Yeah, for a space saving. But if you look at archaeological finds, all the liquids are always kept in something called an amphora, which had an ovoid shape. So let's go through this exercise quickly. If you put it in a spherical shape, the distance from the center to the outer part of the surface of the sphere is the same all around, so it's static. Now, if you make it an elliptical, where it's narrower on 2 ends, the distance from the center is not the same, but because the opposites are the same, an initial movement will ensue, and then a harmony, a static condition will develop because the distance from the center on half of the unit is the same again.
It normalizes again.
It'll normalize again. But if you have an egg where one end is slightly more curved than the other, the distances are very different from the center again. But as the 2 opposite ends mirror each other, they will never find a static position because the narrower, as the wider end goes towards the narrower, it accelerates, and as the narrower end liquid goes towards the wider end, it decelerates. So you have an acceleration-deceleration forming, and it starts to, pulse. You have a pulsing action. It's a rate of about 1 pulse per 2 minutes, depending on the temperature. Yes, it can be measured. So, for example, this ties the egg into the heart. This used to be done in biology years ago, I think they stopped doing this 55 or 70 years ago. And don't think that if you went to college or school 55 or 70 years ago, you still got a real education. It was still tainted. But what they did was they had a fertile egg, and they removed part of the shell, and they put a clear visqueen, or let's say Scotch tape, over it, and you put the egg in front of a light, and you saw the yolk. It's completely surrounded with capillaries. And that's all that was in there. You had the white of the egg, the albumin, the yolk, right, and surrounded with capillaries. And if you looked at the capillaries, they were actually pulsing, right? And there's no heart, there's no body, there's nothing. You see? Now, is that because of the, egg shape, or because it's alive? It's both.
Right.
Yeah.
It attracts maybe the ether surrounding it, and it energizes it or something.
The ether we're not allowed to talk about the ether. because that's the substrate. That's kind of like, we're all a bunch of characters on a video screen. Can we talk about the pixels?
Yeah.
We could try, but now that's like so primary, first order stuff that, yeah, it's kind of like, okay, the analogy about the ether is that, one of the last things a fish realizes when he's dying is that he's been in water his whole life. Like if you go to the fish philosopher, he's telling all the other fish that we're actually in water. The fish are laughing at him. What do you mean we're in water? You drown when you're in water. What do you mean? Right? They laugh at him and ridicule him, right? So, by the way, you've heard of like poisoning a lake and the fish die?
Yeah.
You've heard of that, right? Toxic waste and all that. Do you know the fish that die first are the ones that ingested and drank the water first? They don't all die at the same time. It's the thirsty fish that die first. And like Greek, the fish drink water? Yeah, they drink water. That's just like we're in air, right? We're in air or atmosphere, and we actually breathe it, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so
That's why they have gills.
yeah, but it's more they actually drink the water too. They get thirsty. Fish get thirsty. And it sounds crazy, right? But if you start researching the biology, like what are these ducts for? We don't know what this is for. Oh, that's when a fish gets thirsty. It takes much moisture uptake through that. No, never discussed. But anyway,
Yeah, nor
that's
is
the ether. Yeah.
Yeah, nor is the stream that the whales, eject. But
Yeah, where is that from? And they're not fish, but they're close enough, right?
right. And more esoteric technique you described once was about how drops. I mean, if you remove, say, a third of a stagnant pool of water, the mass that you remove will become positively charged, but the one that remains will get
A
more.
negative.
Yeah, negative. And so on.
Yeah.
You can repeat this until you get a supercharged one at the end.
Yes, you can. Well, it'll end up charging. I've actually and positive and negative is like north and south poles on a magnet. They don't really exist that way, but they do. It's enough of a qualitative change that we have a way. We need to communicate it somehow, right? So, like you could say instead of positive and negative, you could say cathode and anode. One anode meaning up and cathode meaning to go down, right? So we could use, there is a qualitative difference. If you measured both waters chemically, materially, they would be the same. But qualitatively, they would taste different and behave slightly different. I've always explained this to people. Let's say someone in Greece had a horse farm and it was actually recovering horses that people abandoned. Just like people abandon cars when they don't want them anymore. They abandon horses in agricultural communities. And I gave them a couple of things. When you water the horses, just do this with the water to improve their health quality. And the ones that he did that with improved much faster. So not much of a control, but I did get a positive feedback.
Right.
Quite a bit. Also, when you're cooking and doing food, there's a lot of ancient cultures, when they opened wine, they pour some of the wine on the ground, offered to the gods.
For the gods.
Yeah, adios, right?
And the other, beneficial thing that is very easy to do is to have to ensure that when you're immersed in water, to have it running at all times, even if it's a small stream.
Oh yeah, let's say that's a spiritual bath, spiritual bathing, which is actually healing. You lay in a body of water. It could be a bathtub or a bucket or anything, container. You must have an incoming flow and an outgoing flow simultaneously to make that a healing bath. Regardless of the water quality, you can have, Detroit tap water. It's okay. In order to get the most out of that water, you must have some. Okay, so what does that mean? Simultaneously inflow and outflow. I'll just explain what I do. I have just a small brick house built in 1952. You can imagine what a 1952-53 bathroom looked like, right? Bathtub with a rubber plug. So as I'm filling the tub and I'm laying in it, the tub approaches the level that I want. I turn off the water, hot and cold, turn it off. But I slightly turn it on again, just so some very fine stream of water comes out into the spout, into the tub. So I'm still, just like what would be considered a leak, a little more than just a drop at a time. A very fine stream out of the spout. And at the same time, I nudge the rubber stopper spout just a little so a little bit of water flows out. That's enough to make it a healing bath. You don't have to run through a major amount of water. There's actually someone who did it in the summer in Florida with a kiddie pool. She didn't have a bathtub, but they had an outdoor space. She went and bought one of these toy kiddie pools. She lay down in it and had the water hose. It's Florida, it's hot, and in the summer. And she had the hose trickle in, and she poked a hole in the bottom of the kiddie pool with a very fine drill bit. And she recovered some arthritic condition and stomach conditions over like a few weeks of doing this. Conditions that she had for years, older lady. And why is it that the older people are getting ill? But anyway, the younger people are getting. Have you seen some of the pharmaceutical ads these days showing 20-year-olds for colitis? Oh my gosh. But anyway, it's another discussion, isn't it? So, yeah. So, inflow and outflow simultaneously. The amount of inflow and outflow is not relevant.
Oh, really?
It's just that there is inflow and outflow. Now, obviously, like let's say you have a radio. If you have it turned down low, you hear the song, right? If you turn it up high, you hear the song even more. And if you turn it up, if you have the ability to make it really loud, then you have a disco, right?
Yeah.
Very different energy, all three, but you still get the song. So obviously, a waterfall would be that's flowing out would be the best, wouldn't it?
Yeah, because you're exposed to the more water, the better.
To a degree, yeah. That would be the disco element. Yeah, right.
But and maybe just touch on whether you give credit to homeopathy and whether it should be more emphasized.
Homeopathy is like what the pixels are doing on the screen if you're a video character. In other words, the color of the pixel. Like, for example, go look this up. I'm not sure if the AI allows it anymore, but in America, the United States of America, not to be confused with the United States, but the United States of America, most states, which are almost like countries unto themselves, they each have constitutions, would have a commission, a bureau of the state homeopathy department. You could look that up. And most of them were dissolved by, I think, pre-war times. When I say pre-war, meaning by World War I, they were all dissolved, meaning early 1900s, like 1910, 1912, 1920. I think the last ones in the Midwest were dissolved. But each state had a office of homeopathy. Look it up. Yeah. Now, why would they do that? Why would they have a state-certified board or a board of homeopathy? Because it was a valid treatment method, a valid science, a valid aspect of, the medical community, let's say, right? What were they doing? And why would you have a government office of such if you were just for a fringe minority? It was not a fringe minority. Right?
Similar to how CIA wouldn't invest tens of decades and millions into remote viewing if it was just, whistling Dixie.
Yeah, but if they called it dowsing, would they have to invest anything in it? They did dowsing, by the way, for landmines in the military for Vietnam. Do you remember? There's even a video, I think. Well, I remember seeing a video a long time ago. The remote viewing and the dowsing to find landmines. And it's not like you stand over the landmine and say it's here because you don't need the dowsing rods anymore, right? But anyway, they were doing the directions of it, yeah.
And now maybe we could move on to your latest, or one of them innovations, which is something you dubbed the Scalerator or Water Helix, which it's a device that has no filters or electricity or even moving parts, and also doesn't require maintenance, which you plumb into the water line.
Right.
How did you come up with it?
Very simple. Okay. We'll actually give up the secret. It doesn't matter. Because if you think you can do it, let me know. Contact me. I'm looking for people to help me develop it and also produce these. Magnetic water treatment has long been in the view of something that's viable. But unfortunately, I have to agree with all the skeptics. If you put in magnetic water treatment, there's a few government experiments which showed it did improve the water, quality to a degree where they had industrial problems with scale and other things like that, and solubility. But there is at least 100 times more websites, like 200 websites that tell you it's a scam, it doesn't really do much. And I'm going to have to agree with them, the scam part. And I've done a lot of magnetic water treatment experimentation because we have hard water here in the Southwest, and I was tired of the scale. Scale is not a mineral stain or a mineral deposit per se. It's something that forms like concrete on your water fixtures, to the point that if you have a property you want to sell, you can't clean it off. It looks like encrusted barnacles on bathrooms and kitchens, and so you just remove the toilets, remove the sinks, put new ones in order so the house appears well. That's how bad it gets, right? In other words, it's damaging. So I've tried magnetic treatment, very strong magnets, weak magnets, various configurations, the way that convention shows it, meaning you have a North Pole, South Pole. You put both North and North together, South and South together, North and South, all this stuff. I've tried all that, and I was like, this isn't doing anything for hard water. And I was like, well, there has to be something else, but there's something to it. But I have to agree with all the skeptics and the naysayers that it doesn't work as well as stated. And even though there are some government studies, Department of Energy, it was like very tiny improvement. I was like, but this is really, because I'm beginning to understand what a magnet really is. By the way, a magnet is not what they tell you. A magnet is, I'll give you the analogy. A magnet is, or let's just say, a magnet is to electricity what photographic paper is to light. Think of it that way. Or a photo cell, right? When you take a photo with your stupid rectangle, the smartphone, because they're just cameras that happen to be phones, it stores that image. It's a static image. We're not talking about video. That's all a magnet is. When a very high current is run through a lump of iron or iron alloy of some sort, you turn off the current. If the current was high enough, and it'll leave that lump of iron in the state that it was in when the current was flowing through it, at a rate of about 70%. So it's pretty efficient. That's all it is. It's like a photograph of electricity. So I knew it was viable, and it is pretty. Ken Wheeler calls it a point source device, which I don't really agree, because it has energetic divisions, but you could call it a point source to a degree. But either way, it's another way to look at it. So I was looking at it, and you know how people say there are two sides to a coin, front heads and tails? Mm-hmm. That's not really true. There's a third side to a coin, and that's called the reeded edge, R-E-E-D, reeded edge. And they put that reeded edge on the coins because people were whittling coins down, and you got a coin that you knew was supposed to have a reeded edge, and it was not there. Some of the value was lost. This is when we based currency value on precious metals or substance. So there's a third side to a coin, and that's kind of like a threshold where you're not heads and you're not tails, right? Well, the magnet has something like that, and they call it the block wall. It's the pure potential of the magnet. That's where the North and South Pole come from. By the way, there is no such thing as a North-South Pole, just like there is no positive and negative, right? But that's another discussion. I would defer to Ken Wheeler's videos on what a magnet is on that. I would say those are very good. By the way, I'll say this publicly. What I don't know about magnets, Ken Wheeler knows, and what he doesn't know about magnets, I know. Right? That's kind of the old thing. I know between me and my brother, we know everything. So if they ask you a question you don't know, my brother knows that, right? It's kind of like one of those deference things. But let's just say the third part of the magnet no one was using was pretty interesting, and I was like, okay. What I did was I grabbed a magnet, and I was like, I'm going to run the water over the block wall, not where the poles are, not where the force in motion is. See, because people are like hairless monkeys, right? So if you threw some magnets into a community of monkeys, chimps, primates, they're very different though. Chimps and gorillas and orangutans are completely different. So, but anyway, culture, societies, the way they act and all that too. But if you threw, let's say, a bunch of magnets onto primates, they would be so amazed on how anything with any iron content stuck to the face of the magnet. And you come back 1,000 years later, and they're still just looking at that, right? The shiny object syndrome. They're never going to postulate and think that what else is going on. They're never going to notice the third side of the coin. Well, what I did was I grabbed a fairly sized magnet, and I went to the water heater. And when the water heater is connected with a flex connector, there was a loop there on one of the flex connectors on the feed. And this 4-inch magnet that I had fit perfectly in there. And I just slid it in. It stood there without any extra work. And I was like, okay, wow, this was like made for this. That whoever did this 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 20 years ago, that loop did it, wow, look at that, just fit perfectly. And then I started noticing on any device that used in the house, washing machines, hot water side, there was no scale formation on the hot water. And typically, getting rid of scale formation on the hot side is more difficult. So I was like, oh my gosh, scale is only forming on the cold water. So there's no scale, absolutely no mineral scale at all forming on the hot water. It doesn't make sense because the hot water is the hardest to get rid of. I need to put this on the water main. I need to put it on the water. I need to bend and make the water flow go around the block wall, specifically the block wall only, isolated away from the poles. And that's the history of it. That's how it started, and it works really, really well. And then there's another device, which I hesitate to speak on, because let's just say it's 1902 or 1903, and Henry Ford is, let's say, putting out mass-produced cars, the Model T. Is he going to talk about, let's say he has a time machine and he has a Ferrari in the garage, a modern Ferrari. Is he going to tell people about that? Or is he going to just tell them about the Model T because
Maybe
it works so well?
he's going to give them just a teaser or something.
Yeah. We've taken it. So this is like what I'm offering is I just gave you all the technical expertise and everything to build it yourself, but we offer a device, and it's the first Gen 1, Mark 1. There are other devices, and give me an example. One of the device, 11-second video, if you were to see the video, whoever was a participant in that, we had a bucket of dirty water, and the dirty water went through the device and came out crystal clear on the other side, and the person holding the device while I was holding the camera was laughing, saying, no one's going to believe this. No one's going to believe this, right? I'm like, yeah, they're not, so let's just keep it to ourselves for now, and let's see how well the other one does, because no one's going to believe the other one, the Model 1. Like, if you went to a horse and buggy society exclusive with a Model T, and you were the first one that arrived, and a few of your friends saw it, and they wanted to tell other people about it, they're going to say, no one's going to believe this, right? He's got a horseless carriage, until it becomes more common. So that's where we're at with the technology of it. But we can pretty much do anything with water. Yes, anything with a capital T with water at this point, we're confident. But will we do it? No. We can do it, but it doesn't mean, just because you can jump off a building doesn't mean you should, right?
Yep.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah. So where just magnetization would
doesn't work.
Would suspend the impurities, this as good as vanishes them.
Well, yes, because now we get into a 4-hour discussion on what material really is, right? And I think we mentioned that before, it's just a sense of movement. But let me just tell you what's going on with the magnetic water treatment. When you look at a magnet, in the center, especially if you look at what's called a ferrocell or a magnetic cell, a viewing cell, you'll see that looks like a black hole in the middle. And here you can do this experimentation. If you have a large magnet, let's say the south side. By the way, when you have a compass, the red tip on the compass that is north, that is a North Pole magnet. And the reason it points north is because the northern latitude, even though it's 30 degrees off now, northern part of the Earth, that's a South Pole magnet. And the south, where the compass points to the south, that compass needle is actually a south magnet. The south pole of the Earth is a South Pole magnet. When it points south, it's pointing to the North Pole of the magnet.
So opposite.
So the north is actually a South Pole magnet, and the south is actually a North Pole magnet. But your compass is correct. So when you see the red tip on a compass, that is really the North Pole of the magnet. It can only point to the South Pole, which is the north. So we are steeped in confusion, aren't we? Because this is a very simple thing to overcome, but it sounds confusing. So anyway, if you look at the center of a magnet, you'll see there's this black hole. So when you're subjecting the water flow to the pole and that black hole, it neutralizes and cancels itself out. Whatever you're doing, it's kind of like you're trying to light a barbecue and you have the lighter in one left hand, and on your right hand you have a fire extinguisher. So I'll say, go ahead and light the barbecue, but when you light the barbecue, with the lighter, at the same time, you have to pull the fire extinguisher every time. How far are you going to get? Nowhere. So stop doing one or just do one or the other. So that's what's happening when you run the water over the face of the magnet, and no one gets it. It doesn't matter if it's South Pole, North Pole, either or both. Now, the interesting part about this is an inversion that happens. If you have a large enough magnet, let's say the north face is facing you, only the south pole of the magnet will stick to it. But if you reverse the magnet where it repels, north to north, with a much smaller magnet, if you go to the exact center, it'll attract. So I've shown where I can have north, same facing poles attract. But they have to be of different size, and they have to be very precise. And I can have them, as a matter of fact, I can take two magnets of the same poles, stick them together, put them on a telephone pole 10 meters away, and they're still stuck together. I'll walk up with another magnet in my hand and rotate it, and they'll pop apart from 30 feet away. Even though they only seem the field is a couple of inches strong. How the hell do you do that? Why does that happen? Well, you know what I just mentioned, wireless communication using magnetic propagation instead of radio propagation. Oh my gosh, do we have to talk about that? No, we don't have to talk about it.
But, and that's, I mean, the device works because there is no dirty water, because water tends towards purification. You're just helping
Always.
it along with the block wall.
Right, just like think of your body. No matter, when you start, let's say, abusing the body with toxins, bad food, junk food, not to mention junk food like McDonald's, stuff like that, your body in the beginning starts processing that and tries to maintain a certain level of health and fitness, and you're okay. But if you do it long enough, then you suffer the consequences. Your body just can't recover. So it's helping water recover back to its state, just like the water always wants to be in a benevolent state. But the thing is here, when I do water projects, for example, if you go take it to a standard scientific training, they see the water and it's got impurities in it. And their project scope is, how do we get the impurities out of the water? That's how all of their systems work, right? My approach is different. When I see water with impurities brought to me, I see how am I going to separate the water from the impurities? Sounds like a play on language, doesn't it? They focus on taking the impurities out of the water. I focus on taking the water out of the impurities.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like a play on words, but it's not. It's
like
completely
focus on
different
boiling
method.
the pot to leave the salt in it instead of trying to pull the salt out of the water. I don't know if that's a good enough analogy, but
Yeah. But it's a wordplay no matter how you do it until you understand what I'm saying, and see the approach. And I don't know how well we could do that in 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm. So you can do all this without any moving parts.
Right.
With
It's
a really
passive. It's in other words,
minimalistic.
if you took the scalerator apart and you viewed inside, you'll see there's nothing in here. It's just a pipe. It's just a pipe. Remember years ago we were speaking, I said, I have a pipe that you could look at it, there's nothing in the gut, there's nothing in there, and you run dirty water on one end and clean water comes out on the other. It boggles the mind, right?
But you had it tested as well, the resulting
Oh, yeah.
water.
Yeah, you must have a runner length on it. Two labs have tested it, and I'm not going to mention natural action technology, but when I first gave it to people, this is not a regular device. They have it on a bench with all their test equipment, and they run water through it. They just pour water through it, right? Just holding it in their hand. I'm like, it doesn't do anything. And I'm like, yeah, I know. It needs a runner length. It needs at least 10 or 20 meters on either end, at least on the business end, the effluent side, the side that the water's coming out of. You have to have a runner length, right? For example, anyone who works with automobiles knows that car engines need a runner length. Airplane engines need a runner length, right?
Mm-hmm.
In other words, the air coming in has to go through a certain distance, called a runner, a manifolded tube, and the exhaust has to go. Have you ever heard a car with the exhaust falling off, right? It's really noisy. So anyway, that's just a simple principle. It's harmonics. There's harmonics involved here. But the moment they put, I was like, well, we don't have a runner length. I said, okay, did you take lunch yet? This is the lab, right? No, we're taking lunch soon. Okay, just credit me on. just here, go to the nearest hardware store, get one of those slinky hoses for $30 and connect it that way, and then run the water through it. They didn't get back to me for 2 days, and they're like, it's amazing. It does everything you say. Right?
So it removes anything that would fall under the umbrella of scale, or?
Yeah, well, the things there's changed. They're very much changed. Depends on, it removes it. It's kind of hard to say. It's changed. There's a maturation, a fermentation, a transmutation. All those things happen. The property, it's like angry dog versus lap dog. Same dog, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And also,
too much time. Honestly, I don't know how it works, but it works.
And it also structures as a byproduct. It structures the water.
Oh my gosh, yeah. The water quality is the way I promote it to people. It's like, first of all, I'm not available for discussion on this. We have a group of other people that will be doing it soon. Too many people want to talk to me about it, and I get people saying, "Well, so and so would like one. Would you talk to them?" I'm like, tell them I'm not available. I'm not available. Sorry, because it'll never end. And I'm just going to say the same thing. When people want this, usually it's people of high net worth because the device is pretty expensive. And when I speak to them, it's a very short conversation. It's basically, this is to bring to your home, to your dwelling, what you might consider the finest water, what you could be comparable to the finest waters in the world. If you've ever traveled, and you've gone somewhere, you said the water here is so wonderful when I shower, bathe, or use the kitchen or whatever. That's what you'll have in your home instead of this downplayed thing like, oh, that's tap water, right? No one talks about how bad tap water is because it's ubiquitous. It's universal. It's universal that tap water is no good, but there are some exceptions. Like if you go to Palomar, places in Arkansas, places in Europe, in the Swiss Alps or whatever, like how wonderful the water was here. If you're aware of that and want to pursue that, or if you have a scale issue, then this is the only thing that would do that. And everyone comes back. We have some testimonials. What's interesting, I keep asking for testimonials. These are people who don't know each other all over geographically. And you read their testimonials, and they're as if they all had a discussion. We're going to write the same thing. So funny. So I'm always looking for testimonials to see if they're saying the same thing. It's not verbatim, but it's pretty much the same testimonial.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and it's pretty amazing to be able to do this. But the reason I said I don't know how it works is the same way if you ask a trained physicist what is electricity, the honest ones basically in private will tell you we really don't know. Does that mean we have to stop using it?
Just like with dowsing and the other things.
Yeah, what is it exactly? Yeah, so Now the other devices that are not available are what we're doing is we're taking the magnet and moving the block wall from its position and dividing the block wall from its position without using other magnets. And that's the most I'm going to talk about. There's just no reason for it. It's like, again, let's say you go to a horse and buggy society, strictly horse and buggy and oxen, and you show up with an automobile. A Model T is fine. You don't have to bring, I don't know, a Hummer or a Ferrari or Lamborghini or a Tesla truck, right? Heaven forbid. You don't have to bring any of that. Just start them off with a Model T and they'll be good with that for a decade or two, right? There's no reason for it. Yeah? So, like, think about when I grew up, the phone was always hanging on the wall. It had a short cord or a long cord. It was a desk. And it was rotary. Rotary. Then the push buttons came out in the 1980s or late 70s, right? So it's funny, like a young person, someone born in the 2000 odds, I always say, give them a rotary phone, like something I grew up with, and ask them to dial a number. It'll be like funniest thing you've ever seen, like watching a monkey trying to fuck a football or something. But anyway, it's not that's not family friendly, but anyway. But when I grew up, the phone was always on the wall and had a cord attached to it. And when it rang, it was important. You know what one of the biggest bummers was back in those days? When the phone rang and you had a wrong number. Because everyone ran to the phone. Who is it? Who is it? Right? And the wrong number. Oh, what a bummer. Okay, look at how phones are now. Right? Spam, you're getting messages, whatever. What a difference. Okay, so this would be like having the first cordless flip phone in your pocket. where you could go anywhere, pretty much, and have a phone in your pocket. This is what we're offering right now, not a smartphone.
Yeah, not one with transparency and holograms or something.
We're not even offering like a BlackBerry Dingleberry phone from 20 years ago. Not even offering that. We're just offering the basic motor. Remember the Motorola brick phones? You needed a suitcase for the battery, and it was big brick. That's what we're offering. But you're not tied to your home. Because years ago, if you needed to make a phone call, it was either hanging on the wall or you went to a payphone, which was attached to the phone booth.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the way everything is now with water, and we're giving you a cell phone, the first cell phone.
Right. But it's
And
safe
that's,
to say,
yeah, we're regulating the technology, in other words. We're not putting out,
right.
we're only putting out 10%. And 10% is 1,000% more than you're going to get from anywhere else, by far.
Yeah. And it's also a safe bet that the brains or the reactor or what's responsible for the work here can be redirected in numerous cases, even outside the water.
Say that again, reword that? I didn't quite get the thought.
The reactor or the what's responsible for the work in the water helix scalerator can be redirected in many cases even beyond water.
Oh yeah. There's been some rudimentary experiments done with other fluids, and they didn't act like they were supposed to. Like when you're doing J2, J3 jet fuel through it, the air mixture didn't matter as much. It wasn't as critical, which means you could use a lot less fuel. But I don't even want to get into that. I mean, the last thing, it's a very the oil and gas business is very clandestine. You can't just walk into it, right?
Yeah.
They have a very harmonious system with a pecking order, and you don't go in there, you don't barge in there with whatever. You let them know what you've got. They invite you, it's like they call you, you don't call them once they know about you, right? I don't know if Suzanne.
Sugarloaf, I remember that song. But yes, no, we were a group that would go and buy out all the stuff that they didn't want, like Going Green and all this BlackRock and all those corporations you mentioned, or alluding to, Exxon, Chevron, Shell, whatever. I was, we're part of the group, the second stage, if you will. They get rid of it because they've regulated themselves out of making a profit here in the Louisiana assets and here in America, which is set for destruction by design. We would pick it up, we would bid. It was rounds of bidders on their fields that they're trying to get out of, because they would keep 24-hour service there and engineers we would just keep a couple guys, we would run it, we're a different stage, but I know what you mean. I know what the point you're getting at. We weren't part of that primary, we would maybe pop a few holes or something, the operators like Texas Petroleum or Hillcorp, right? But that's like your second phase of that industry. We're the second phase of the industry, so I don't want to,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a closed group, but yeah, and they're all in cahoots. I don't believe. I think competition is what they tell people. So they give 90% of their energy to the corporations, and they're fighting each other, the people, the masses, thinking they have to compete. Right? I've never seen, the higher up you go on the corporate ladder, the less competition there is. Give you an example. Back during World War II, both the Allies and the Axis powers needed natural rubber. So you'd go to a natural rubber plantation in the Philippines, and it was divided in half with a fence. And on one half, you had the German National Socialist Party, aka the Nazis, patrolling that half of the rubber plant, and the other half was being patrolled by the Australians, Americans, and the British, the same rubber plant, right? So where's the competition? Why don't they just turn around and take pop shots at each other? Well, in Europe, they're trying to gain ground, right? With field battles and tanks. Doesn't make any sense, does it?
Well, none of it makes sense unless you understand from a
baking
or depopulation, and once you pull out much further, but anyway.
Yeah, the depopulation doesn't help, by the way. It's a matter of stupid people. How many stupid people is too many stupid people? 1, 2, 3, 4 billion? How many is too many? I think one stupid person, two stupid people is too many in the world, right? Because three would be, because three's a crowd, right?
But are they useless assets? I mean, there's no way that they could be, helped out? That's why I still think it's depopulation, don't these people have potential, or they're not worth it, or?
I don't believe in the depopulation model, because if, let's say you depopulate the world down to 2 people, one male, one female, and they're both dumb, what have you done? Nothing. No progress, right? It depends on what your model is. Yeah.
But I was curious if we could just give a primer, since we promised it, on weather work, which, you know, it's kind of an interesting part of water, and we'd already covered some of it before, because you do have a lot to say there, and a lot of insight
Success.
that is maybe unique to you. Yes.
Yeah.
So maybe describe how you got introduced to this subject.
Joe Blankenship, back in the day, introduced me to Wilhelm Reich. He was Wilhelm Reich.
Cloudbuster.
Show. Yeah. Joe Blankenship, he's passed away in 2012, I believe. There's some videos about, he's there, he just likes to talk. If you think I could verbose, he can really talk. He was around Schauberger, Tesla's people, Howard Hughes. He introduced Wilhelm Reich. He was Wilhelm Reich's chauffeur when Wilhelm Reich had a house here for 2 years or 3 years in Tucson. And what you'll never see online, I'll start off, you can look up who Wilhelm Reich is.
Yeah.
He was a nudist. And I said, Joe, how was it being around Wilhelm Reich? He says, he was a great guy, but I hated it. He was a nudist. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, we show up to the house, and he's like, Joe, unload the car. He's like, fine. And, you know, Wilhelm Reich's already in the house. Joe grabs the bags or boxes out of the car, and by the time he walks in, there's Wilhelm Reich naked, laying down on the couch, smoking a cigarette. He's like, shit, you know, I hate that. You know, he just didn't want to be around a nudist. So I was like, oh, thanks for letting me know. He's just a bunch of stuff that you won't find online. So he had a ranch, and I went down there with some other people, and he had this wooden box with metal on the inside. It was really rickety. It was leaning over. I said, this is really loose, nailed together. And I said, I could fix this for you. He says, no, don't fix that. That was built by Wilhelm Reich. Leave that. I was like, what the hell is this guy Wilhelm Reich guy? Everybody keeps talking about him. Never heard of him. And there you go. Well, how do you find out? I mean, in the early 2000s, how do you find out about someone you've never heard about? You just look them up online. You know, we had HTML websites, right? There was plenty of stuff, right?
So
then after, yeah.
You read
so
his books, or?
Well, I was actually around the people that worked with him. Well, you know, also, which I think adds a little more flavor.
Sure.
To a degree. So in other words, I touched someone who touched Wilhelm Reich, right? So there's like a lineage now, right? You know, the laying on of hands thing, right? So then I found out about Trevor James Constable, and I got in touch with him, and we were frequently calling each other, maybe 2-3 times a week, up until he died in 2016. And I don't need to get into what all these men do and did. You could look it up yourself. Trevor James Constable.
Yeah, Arthur, UFO phenomenon.
Yeah, and also weather work using passive devices. He modified the Wilhelm Reich's Cloudbuster because he spent a lot of time on a cargo freight ship, and using the water-powered devices would make a mess on the deck. And the captain told him, I don't mind doing your weather work, but keep this deck dry. Come up with some devices that don't use water. That's what his advancement was. Very little on the internet about that now. There's a few videos still remaining. So these men were early on. They tried many things. Sometimes it didn't work. And the reason I'm saying that is because what they tried and couldn't do, we're able to do now. In other words, Wilhelm Reich had a phone on the wall. Trevor James Constable had a mobile phone. Now we have a smartphone. And to make a long story short, when you understand the concept, it's a very simple. Okay, we're mid-range thinkers. We only think in the middle. We don't comprehend the simple. We don't comprehend the complex. We're mid-range thinkers. Most of this lies in the simple, which is an extreme also. And once you get it, you got it, and you can do it. And I have a thing with Ocelli. Chuck Ocelli. It's called Rated Y. It's a paid-only podcast, and the Patreon on there. It goes through Patreon. We've uploaded several hours of a webinar. I keep saying seminar, but seminars in person. Webinars on the web. There's about 9 hours. I think 2 3-hour sections. There's one more section that will be loaded in the future. And I've had more than a dozen people, a handful of people, reporting back on successes. Making rain, stopping rain, right? Changing temperature, local and long distance. So, I mean,
not through psychic. components. This was maybe Trevor Constable's merit that he took it out of that area and made it more about actionable things. And
Yes.
but through devices that are standalone that you have perfected.
Yes. Right. And I tell people these devices are so primitive and simple that don't go out and buy it. On garbage day, drive around and you'll see enough material people put out on recycling day that you'll build it from that. That's more satisfying.
Loom of the Future, is that ringing any bell?
That's a real good one. That entire book is an interview between him and Thomas Joseph Brown.
That's exactly, yes.
That's a good read, but it's more advanced. In other words, it's in the middle. It's in the middle. Like after you got the basic principles, reading that is going to be kind of, I don't know what they're talking about here, but it's basic enough to some degree.
But it's also not to be confused with powders in like tissue paper or the silver iodine furnaces like they use to control weather in Tibet.
Yeah. There was a guy named Olson or Chris something in San Diego. There is a statue dedicated to someone in San Diego, a bronze statue who brought rains to Southern California 100 years ago or more. 100 years ago is the 20s. I didn't say 150 years ago. Because, California was not populated because it was basically ocean all the way to desert, right? So, the biggest, how you hear about the mafia, the mobs, the underworld, the most extreme organization is the California the governments in LA.
Diverting all the water.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also too, what's that billionaire family, whatever, with the palm, starts with the R. They have all the water aquifer, they buy up all the water rights. The rat finks or something they're called. The rat. If I Google
that sounds about right.
Let me see. Who owns? And then P.O.
You can, just like they take it away
Resnick,
from you by
the Resnick, Stuart and Linda Resnick. Forgive me, but.
No, just what they do, you can do also. But people feel like they've been mentally neutered. We live in a country that is based on constitutional limitations. You notice I didn't say constitutional rights because there's no rights in the Constitution. Rights come from the Bill of Rights, which came later. Because the only reason they did the Bill of Rights is because there would have been another revolution if they didn't, right? But they covered that up, called it the Whiskey Rebellion and all that, but it was no Whiskey Rebellion. There was another revolution brewing. Constitution was very limiting, but it was limiting to the centralized government. So if you understand constitutional limitations, which the opposite are give you a lot of freedoms. Like my favorite amendment, how you hear about discussions of amendments, First Amendment, Second Amendment. What about the Ninth Amendment? How the First Amendment, Second Amendment, Third and Fifth Amendment, they're very specific. Ninth Amendment, I only want the Ninth Amendment. Ninth Amendment means you're free to do anything you do, and you could call it a right as long as it doesn't mess around with anybody else's rights. That's what I call on the Ninth Amendment.
Yeah, right? Enumerate it, ensuring listed.
I don't care about the First Amendment if I have the Ninth Amendment. I don't care about the Second Amendment if I have the Ninth Amendment, you see? So, again, our attention is there's something called an injunction. So if you don't like something that the government has done, you just send them an injunction.
Gag orders, temporary, anything, specific performance is a type. Injunction is something to do. It's the other kind of reward or what you're asking
so
for.
if you're tired of being pulled over and getting speeding tickets 1 mile above them, send them an injunction. Saying, look, I've been pulled over before. You're affecting my right, and what you're doing is against any law or code you have that's against the Constitution is null and void on its face. That's why I'm always laughing. Like, remember the Patriot Act coming after U.S. citizens? I'm like, I love that. I love that because that's always been there. They just reiterated it. Go read the Trading with the Enemies Act from the teens, 1933. It's the same as the Patriot Act. Look what they did to the Japanese that were born here during World War II.
In California,
Oh, everywhere. In Nevada, Texas. Do you know that even after World War II, up until the early 1950s, they didn't want to release German and Italian prisoners because they were using them as labor on picking fruit and working in the fields. You don't hear about any of this stuff. So just like Pizzagate and whatever won't make it
John
to the history
Podesta,
books.
Tony Podesta.
Yeah, that'll never make it to the history books. Maybe Epstein will, but there's an Epstein in every town. I don't know what the big deal is about. Anyway, I don't want to get into the if you have if you live in a town that has a population of more than 100,000, you have something called a brotherhood that lives there that runs everything. It's made up of the lower level politicians, car dealerships, certain industry, certain like big businesses, family-owned business. They all get together and they have power. If they don't like what you're doing, they have Homeland Security on their side. They have the military on their side. The police fraternities on their side. So it might be 250,000 or more, you have that, right? And they have access to what all these other agencies have to do to you, to whatever. You don't live in the kind of world that's being advertised. But the way they take the water rights is the way you take them back. Basically, if they're taking water rights using fiat, because they want, fiat just means let it be, you can take it back by injunction, right? So it's quite interesting how empowered we are. We're mentally neutered. Remember, if you notice something that you don't like going on in your society, you notice it with your eyes and your ears and all that. That's all in your brain. Remember, you don't see with your eyes, you see with your brain. You don't hear with your ears. You don't read with everything is happening in your brain. So they understand what it takes to subdue your mental function, right? And not understand the basis of this country, right? The basis of this country is set up on limitations. So what I state is like, for example, a lot of people don't like reading limitations of the Old Testament with all these laws, right? If you just have a handful of laws, that's very liberating. Because if you have like a handful of prohibitions, that means that everything else is indirectly encouraged, right? If you can't do A, B, C, D, let's say there's 100 things you can't do that are prohibitions. That means there's an almost infinite amount of things you can do. And that's how the Constitution is. It sets a set of limitations. And we are a free country, literally. But you're not free to create harm or do anything harmful. To someone's. It's more than a social contract. It's actually a government contract. It's a way of order, right? Because we don't live in an anarchy. Anarchy means no one at the top. It's castle doctrine, right? Castle, it means everyone knows the right thing. And in order to have an anarchy, you must have a very, very highly elevated society where you don't need a central government. Everyone is the government.
It's within everyone,
Yeah, just like they say, for example, let me just dispel a few things as a tangent. I know, Daniel, let me know I could stop. But they say the United States of America is a Christian nation. It is not a Christian nation, never was. It would be just as accurate to say it's a Muslim nation, just as accurate. Christianity has nothing to do with this country. They use God in their terminologies because they're not Christian, they were deists. Look up the difference. What is the difference between a deist and a Christian? Not the same thing. The only thing they have in common is that there is a creator, right? And the deist, basically the philosophy and the thinking is that there is a creator, a master architect that made everything. And after he made everything, it's an autonomous system. He walked away from it. And it's up to us.
Yeah.
It's up to us. Our level of diction, our level of morality, our level of ethics, our level of law and order or disorder is how this world will be. And doesn't it seem that way? Doesn't it seem that way? So they were deists. They were not Christians. So don't anyone of these idiots in the media, on the internet say, "Oh, this is a Christian nation." No, it's not, dickhead. Not at all. I take offense to that. It's a deist. Am I a deist? No. But more yes. I would say more yes than no. Definitely not a Christian. It's not a Christian nation at all. So, even though now if you're in the Bible Belt or at the buckle of the Bible Belt, they'll disagree, right? And they will cite things that they believe. Constitution is Christian, this and that and the other, and they don't know anything about it. Founding fathers and all that. So anyway, I just had to throw that in because all I see is these misconceptions, and it's amazing how little people know about what they believe in. They think they know, let's say. They know very little about it.
No. But another thing they don't know about is the fact that even their pipes in the buildings, they manipulate weather, but in a different way.
Ignored.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when you go back to the weather, if you see like it's basically a hollow metal tube, well, you'll say, well, Greek, there's if you any stroll through any neighborhood, low, few stories or single story buildings, you'll see pipes coming out of the building. Yes, when you have a natural terrain and subdivision homes are built there, and these vent pipes that are sticking out of the homes, you'll notice there is a weather change, there's a climate change, a local climate change, always. But what happens is if you leave the device in one position for too long, it's ignored. Just like the body. For example, give you an extreme example. It may not be that good, but someone gets, you ever heard of someone getting shot with a bullet from a gun and it's lodged somewhere in their body and they leave it there because it's in a critical area, right? Or whatever, right? Do they complain about it every day for the next 30 years? No. Only initially, right? Anyone who gets shot, the first complaint is it burns, right?
Yeah.
Not like Hollywood. So anyway, you can be walking around with pieces of metal, shrapnel, whatever in your body for the rest of your life and forget that they're there. And that's exactly what's happening with a lot of the hollow metal tubes that you see in our modern day constructions. Not to be confused with what the application of the devices we build, which tend to be hollow metal tubes also.
So that's the shape. You probably experimented with all the other ones, like maybe conical or that are solid, but the hollow tube is and maybe maybe compare that with it's something you found about let me see CSE or something, the effect of CSE.
Yeah, cavity structure effect. Yeah, the cavity structure effect, the CSE, is very, very much real. You can experiment with that as well. You could look up cavity structure effect. These are things. Okay, one thing. There's let's just go back to this. This will pretty much. I could be shameless and say the only way to really do this is take the webinar that I did, and that you have to be a subscriber, right? I'm not going to offer that publicly. I don't know if someone wants to bootleg it, put it out on the internet. I don't know, whatever. By the way, I can't. Let me just. So many thoughts at the same time. I can only say one thing at a time, right? Mm-hmm. But the CSE effect and all these other things are valid. What I want to just do one thing at a time here. Wilhelm Reich was infiltrated. If you read about him, how he met his end. And Joe knew the person who was a cellmate, and the story what really happened, how he died the day he was supposed to be released, is because they convinced him. They brought in. Wilhelm Reich died. He was in prison for a few years for breaking a federal mandate to not do interstate commerce with his stuff and put him in jail.
Commerce clause.
He didn't know about the legal system. He didn't know about injunctions and all that. Anyway. He always, you could appeal to him with a scientific mind. So what they did was they had 2 or 3 loose colleagues, people that he knew, come into the prison and convince him to take an injection before he left. And he died from that. That's just a long story made short. But he was infiltrated by the FBI. They had plants working as nurses and as scientists and apprentices. And when one of the reports that was released from the FBI was that one of the ladies that was infiltrating, she says, his stuff works exactly as stated. The only thing is the technology is very slow. It's not immediate. It's not immediate like gunpowder or high-speed chemistry or beam weapons. Yeah, it's very slow. It takes days for it to, but everything that he stated was happening, but it's very slow. It doesn't matter. Because they know if things are slow, you can speed them up. So they suppressed him anyway. But that's a really good way to sum it up in that report. That his technology, everything that he's putting out public is true. It's just that the reactions are very slow, meaning over days. So we don't live in that kind of world, by the way, right? If you talk to a classic American housewife, or after such a thing, to make a home cooked meal, that takes too long. I don't have time for that, I mean, if I don't spend an hour a day cooking, there's something wrong, right? If I had a family, it would be 3 hours a day cooking, minimum, right, to prepare food. And 15 minutes or more is too much for these people. So, anyway, it's a very slow technology. You notice we don't need to get into it. The shameless plug. is that I've done a webinar. It's a 9-hour, 3 sections, and if you can sit through that, if you have enough interest, there's still people reporting constantly. We haven't had rain. It's unusual. I did blah, 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 what you said. We have rain now, and it came exactly against the forecast, against this. Or my big thing is hurricane abatement. Hurricane abatement. So if there's a
Stop
hurricane,
nipping them in the bud, meaning.
right, or when they're full, before they make landfall. If they're going to make landfall in less than 12 hours, I can stop them from making landfall. I need a 12 to 24-hour window.
And you can do that remotely.
I have a 3,000 to 5,000 foot range. Yeah, I've stopped at least 20 of them already. In other words, your geography of the United States would have been very different by now. But let me just put it this way. How can you say that because they didn't happen? How can you prove they would have happened anyway, right? Duh.
Yeah, feedback.
Yeah, well, you could see them, and the last one we battled was Lee, which was completely artificial. You don't have a tropical storm form into a Category 5 in less than 8 hours. We blasted it, and went down to Category 2, and then became Category 5 in 6 hours again. Somebody was pumping it. So this is like Spy versus Spy. Did you remember the Spy versus Spy cartoon?
Yeah, it was the white one and the black one.
Yeah.
And it was a cartoon within a cartoon.
Yeah, that's right. In Mad, I think it was, or something else. Yeah, one of those National Lampoon publisher. Yeah. So here's the thing about putting things on the internet. Whenever you put anything on the internet, even if it's behind a paywall or anything like that,
It gets scraped.
it's no different. Well, yes, but I think that, you hear a lot of people saying they stole my stuff, right? This was my stuff. I don't believe in that. Anyone could take what I've said and use it. Because to me, putting something on the internet or publishing it on the internet is like taking your garbage out to the curb on garbage day, right? And the next morning you see someone going through your garbage and you go yell at them because you say, hey, that's my garbage, get out. That doesn't make any sense, right?
It's a public square, even if there is a paywall
Yeah.
or something like that.
Once you put it out, go ahead. It's
Yeah.
Look, another thing, like people, when I was in New York, goes, my bike got stolen. I'm like, really? I said, tell me what happened. They're like, well, I was going to the store. I decided to leave my bike outside the window. I was just going to be in there for a few seconds, and someone jumped in. Oh, no, your bike wasn't stolen. You gave it away. Don't you know where you are? How long does it take for someone to jump on your bike?
They didn't intend it
Right?
mentally, but they intended, or they implied
Yes.
it. You get what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, it looked like it, exactly, right. So
Oh,
when
yeah.
you put something on the internet, you're giving it away. Don't say that someone stole your stuff and is using it. You see how I feel about it? Yeah.
Yeah.
it's completely
Well, one
rational,
way-
and I completely agree. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, one way that you can prove the reality of this is the fact that when you're touching one of these, as you call them, guns, because they pack a lot of high, potential ether, I believe, and you're ungrounded, that can cause serious or even permanent trauma.
The water-powered ones, yeah. If you have a very vigorous, robust water ground to a good source of water, it could kill you, or it'll paralyze you, or give you a heart attack, yeah, or all these other things, stroke, yeah. Because remember, it goes, the potential of the ether goes from low to high. It doesn't go. We're taught that all potentials go high to low, right? You have a high, fully charged battery, it can only discharge. Right, but the potential is backwards with the ether. The low half-charged battery charges the more charged battery till it overcharges. So, yeah, that's what happens with power transformers. When a storm comes through, you see the power transformers explode because the energy in the power transformer wants to go to the storm. The storm is attracting it. It's not. They think that the storm's energy is attacking the transformer. No. The energy that's in the transformer wants to leave the transformer, encasement, insulation, what have you, and jump out into the dielectric, into the atmosphere where the storm is. Yeah,
It's
once
one
you
of the
understand,
one of the tenets of weather manipulation that
Yes, you must
potential goes
understand
from
that.
low to high.
that's right. If you don't understand that, don't even bother. It's like don't even bother cooking if you don't understand temperature and chemistry. Right.
And there are more uses than you counted, like even controlling where lightning strikes and cooling your area, like a bubble that you're in, but not so much heating right?
Well, what happens is, well, let's just say from a practical point of view, when someone starts to get into especially a water gun that's grounded in a storm, you'll see lightning strikes around you. It's very intimidating. Typically, when there are lightning strikes in public, people run indoors, right? And don't get hit or whatever. But what happens with the weather devices, you literally form a bubble around you that you cannot get hit by lightning. No one ever has. It can come pretty close, but you'll deflect it. The same is when you have a device in the automobile and you're driving, and it looks like it might be raining, and as you're driving down the road, you notice the ground is a little wet, and everyone has their wipers on, but you don't need your wipers on. You have no rain on your windshield, very little, maybe a drop or two, not enough to deem running the wipers. And you keep driving, and you're like, man, it's wet out there, and everyone's got their wipers on medium or high, and how come I only have a drop or two on my windshield? Well, you cap the device, and then suddenly, poof, your windshield's full of water.
Mhm.
So this could be over and over and over demonstrated.
And similarly, there was a guy who, called shenanigans on your previous, your Sonics on this, and then you showed him how to stop the wind on his boat.
Right. He didn't understand. He says it doesn't make sense. He was an electrical engineer. He says, no, all potentials go from high to low, but he would go fishing on a lake, one of those states that have all those lakes. And he didn't like the wind. If it was a small, 2-man, 3-man boat, trout fishing or whatever, and the wind would always disturb their day. And he says, well, look, if you got something for wind, I'll try it. And I showed him how to make the device. He was amazed at how simple and primitive it was. And he took it out every time, stopped the wind, and he would go fishing. Mm-hmm.
But maybe the most beneficial long-term use case for this is to reduce pollution, right?
That's right. Ever since I've been here near Tucson, Arizona, we used to have, anyone that's looked this up, before 2003, there was something called an inversion layer. As you drove into town, you could see that the city, it's not really a town, it's the biggest little city I've ever lived in. Beatles sang about it. But anyway, you would see a dark cloud hovering above the city at about 1,500 feet. It was brownish gray. And ever since I've done the weather work, it has never returned, even when I'm not doing weather work. Also, some long-term droughts, once you break them, it could take 20 or 30 years for the drought to come back. So this is like long-term thinking. Now, you mentioned earlier, and I said no, about redeeming the deserts, right? The big deserts. Now, I think his name is DeMeo. He went down to Namibia in the early 90s, which is one of the driest places on Earth, other than the Peruvian desert. There's a couple of deserts that are considered the driest on Earth. And he did some collab with the government where they would dig some channels because if water were to fall there, it could create flooding, and wanted to do some control on the land before the rains came. That's how confident he was, and they agreed. Well, they made it rain in Namibia, formed all these lakes, but it completely devastated the fishing industry in South America. Billions lost. The fish harvesting for 2 or 3 years was completely devastated. I mean,
James
devastated.
DeMeo.
There was no fish.
Was it
Yeah.
James DeMeo?
Yeah, DEMEO. Yeah, I believe. James DeMeo, yeah. Now, why? Why is it that the desert, redeeming the desert, making lakes and desert destroys the fishing industry a continent away? Well, because of something called the food chain. The small fish are eaten by the big fish, so on and so forth. But the biggest fish in the ocean, which are not fish, are whales. What do they eat? Plankton. Plankton are what's eaten by the smallest fish, and then the fish larger than them eat them. Okay, so the plankton is at the start of the food chain. What do plankton require in their diet? Silica dust. Silica. These dry deserts would blow up very high altitude wind and dust storms and deposit the silica in the southern Atlantic. When the lakes formed, what are the chances of dust storms forming? None. What happened to the plankton population? Went away.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened to the little tiny fish that ate the plankton? They went away. So on and so forth. Isn't that an interesting connection?
Yeah, it shows how interwoven it is, but you could still probably make a case for Earth being just a temperate and tropical jungle. That way it would be better this way, long haul. But
Yeah, the only way you could do that is with a vapor canopy. I think Archaics talks about that, the coming vapor canopy, which I'm all for, by the way. If you've lived in a place like Phoenix or Tucson or Yuma or places in Southern Europe, the sun is threatening, can be very threatening in midsummer for at least 3 months out of the year. It can harm you. So I'm all for a vapor canopy.
mhm. Yeah, like Pandora in Avatar, the planet. But
Yeah, or Venus,
right.
even closer.
Right, but do you believe that the critters that Trevor Constable described, or the plasmoids, play a part in weather manipulation, or is it just that you're zapping the sky?
I think I have them on video. I've ever shown that video to you?
No.
By the way, I've done my own. I went out during the dry season and made rain, and I would do these short videos, and you didn't see them with the naked eye, but I attracted hundreds, if not thousands, of skyfish. They're called rods, flying rods, and you can see them on the video. They're like arrows, but if you zoom in on them, they have like a spiral meandering fin that goes from head to tail, and they're very fast. You can't see them with the human eye, and they penetrate through walls, supposedly. There are some videos where they've gone through airplane wings. So I wouldn't call them interdimensional, but the matter doesn't seem to stop them.
Yeah, they're just confined to the higher layers of the atmosphere for now.
Oh, they came down pretty low. They came down to 100 feet or less.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they come down to ground level.
And they can communicate, like with Robert Temple.
Probably, yeah. I've got too many things to do to start dialogue with those guys.
But so you don't believe that they're necessarily involved, but it's more of a matter of disturbing the.
It's ecology. Just like if you live on a farm, you have mice, rats, birds, snakes. Well, what do? Yeah, you go about your business, and they're always going to be around, right? Until you completely, abate them or something. And I don't think you're going to abate these little critters.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever maybe used the instruments for weather making to charge yourself with ether?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Toothache goes away. Yeah. You could have parasites removed, things like that. I mean, we could go on and on and on about that. Yeah, you have to use your imagination.
So you covered it in those webinars?
Sort of. No, I just stayed more on the practical side of weather engineering. And when I say weather manipulation, it's engineering. Anyone going out with one of these devices, you'll see a change in wind right away, within 5 seconds. You can control wind direction or wind. You'll have precipitation or stop precipitation. There was someone in Corpus Christi that was framing a wood-framed house, and he had the crews come out every day. It was storming every day. He says, "Can I do something?" I said, "Yeah, build this device and have the rains go around you." And the rains went around him. And the crews came every day. So, yeah.
Could you maybe give the absolute most basic beginner setup that would yield like instantaneous feedback, like maybe
a water gun. A water gun is the most effective for a beginner. Yeah. So the water gun is just basically a tube, a galvanized tube. It should be magnetic, like iron. Don't use copper in the beginning or anything fancy. Stovepipe. And just put it in a bucket of water, and just like we spoke about the water overflowing and having in and out, have some water trickle in and some water going out, put a hole in a cloud.
Mm-hmm.
That's the cloud buster, like Zen, jumped out and said, "Cloud buster," yeah, earlier, look at right, yeah. Let's just start making holes in clouds. You could also do that with your eye, but your eye is not something that is technically accessible, right? In other words, technically accessible, we're talking about making tools and devices here, right? And they do work remotely. In other words, the human factor can be excluded. You can have a water-powered gun that is remotely operated with a camera and Wi-Fi, let's say, or satellite, and it will still work. So you can remove the human element from these and they will work. Right. Just like automatic guns on a capital ship. On a mothership has automatic guns, right? That protect it, or a fort. There are facilities that have automatic guns, AI, run guns. RoboCop showed something like that back in the day. So, Yeah, it can be done. It can be operated without a human factor, but the human factor always helps. Yeah.
So you're saying that the success rate is 100%, except when you don't have enough potential.
Right. Yeah. The success rate is 100% if you understand the potential goes from low to high. Yes.
And what happens if you don't have enough?
It'll be that's why I call it weather engineering. Was you have to have a plan, and it should be contrary to the forecast, right? So if you don't have a plan, you could go out there and start waving tubes and whatever. Yeah, you're going to make changes, but you don't know what you're doing. It's like a monkey with a gun, right?
So
Just
they
like
can cause
anything.
havoc.
Absolutely cause havoc. You're going to cause havoc anyway. You're going to have to control it because downwind, you have to understand the climate and the properties downwind and do it responsibly, right? Because it goes from west to east. So making rain somewhere on the western side, let's say the United States of America, we make rain there. Well, it could either dissipate and cause drought downwind, meaning east of you, or it may not discharge completely where you are. And as it's rolling east, going east thousands of miles, it's building up even bigger and making one hell of a storm downstream. So it's a balance between wreaking one hell of a storm, and it's unforeseeable. There'll be no rain in the forecast. They'll get 4 inches of rain in an hour, right? That'll wash out. Yeah. So, or you could create a drought condition if you discharge the area too much. You have to understand charge and discharge.
So
Everything
you can help a storm along that
Sure.
you don't want. Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically acupuncture. I think we discussed, if you ask anyone, we're doing what acupuncture is. But I assure you this, you go through the phone book, I call it the phone book, directory, but acupuncture people that offer that as a treatment. I assure you, especially round-eye people, white people or Americans or Westerners, I assure you, you can call all these acupuncture people to ask them what it's about, and they can't tell you. They just know it works, right? But I can tell you what acupuncture is. It's just like the weather work. And this is the analogy. When you do the acupuncture, let's just say it this way, you install these needles in the skin or under the skin in the human body, and they have different thicknesses, different lengths, different parts of the body. Why do they do that? None of these acupuncture therapists know why. I'll tell you why. Not why they don't know it, but what it really is, what the original purpose of it was. We have a field, an atmosphere around our body, and that atmosphere is charged, just like the Earth's atmosphere is charged, right? And depending on the condition and the method of treatment, the length of the needle is to either take energy from the body and send it to the atmosphere, known as the aura, around the body, or take energy from the aura around the body and send it into the physical body. It's just no different. The acupuncture needles are exactly the same of what a lightning rod is. But a lightning rod is taught to work in one direction, to ground it. But the acupuncture needles go both ways, either to take energy out of the body to the aura that surrounds the body, or from the aura down to the body. Right? So, and there's no acupuncture therapist that knows this, by the way. Go figure.
It's stealing the dynamic force that is surrounding it,
and it works from low to high also, right? But they don't know this. It's just like every cardiologist thinks the heart's a pump, right? Absolutely wrong. Right? So, yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of your aura and the energy field around the body, that's something that could be seen with this dicyanin lenses, this blue or.
Yeah, the red. I think it's
the red for Vietnam, right?
Vision. Yeah, the red night vision. Well, you see, I think it'll scare the living daylights out of you if you leave them on long enough, right? You'll see what's around you, right?
I guess no, I don't know. I can't relate. That was one of the subjects. We got really close to that, so I figured. You talked about McDonald's. That was something I wanted to talk about with the human meat.
The human DNA in the pork. You're going to find it in the pork, because pork and human meat are exactly the same flavor. As a matter of fact, someone who likes eating pork will prefer human meat. If you did a double blind test, the Pepsi challenge, human meat and pork, they're going to say this is pork is much better.
Do you think that's because pigs were hybridized with humans down the line?
Sure, you could say that. I mean, just like, for example, pollock is substitute for lobster. There's certain fish, the imitation crab meat, right? There's fish that taste just like that. So there's an analogy of humans and pigs in the Bible, right? I mean, So I can't, I don't know enough about it, but I do know that you can take organs out, don't know, but it's been reported that you can take many organs out of a pig and they'll take to a human, kidneys, livers, things like that, yeah. But liver
I'll
shouldn't
pass on
have to
that.
be, yeah, I'll pass on all that, yeah. But
But
yeah,
maybe-
I wouldn't trust any fast food for just, here's my advice on fast food, by the way. You'll always find some kind of a market. Just go and get a piece of cheese and some bread and some veg, and it'll cost less and you'll do better. When I'm traveling, I'll look for even if it's one of these big chain grocery stores, they're going to have a bakery section. Grab some bread, go get a piece, if you eat dairy, a piece of cheese or cured meat, make your own sandwich, or get a can of beans and heat them somehow. Don't buy the fast food stuff. I mean, at any rate, for any reason.
Corruption exchanged for convenience.
And there's no convenience. It's just
True. Okay.
yeah. There's no. Is it really convenient? I mean, yeah, you could. Yeah, it's convenient. It's in the path. It's least resistance, right?
Mhm. And maybe my final question about weather manipulation is how can you impose your own intent when we already know that weather is so completely controlled from the equator on by HARP and other agencies. And also, what happens when you have multiple conflicting intentions from, let's say, other weather workers?
Yeah, that's the same thing. You could pose that same question to the airline industry. Look at all the airplanes that are. What is it? Some statistic is 500,000 or 750,000 people up in the air at any time on the Earth, right? But they're not crashing, right? There's conflict potential, right? Collisions and things like that. I can't answer that directly. I have seen some conflict, yeah. I have seen, for example, I know someone in Southern California that I was observing a storm in the Pacific that was going to wind up and give us rain, and it disappeared 2 days before. And there was all these people saying we were supposed to get like 3 days of rain, and we have, it just disappeared. And I was like, somebody's doing that for sure, because I could see how it dissipated within 6 hours, 8 hours. I get a call, and then after that, somebody said, sorry, Greek, you were supposed to get all this rain, but I had to test out this device that I made. I totally dissolved that storm. I was coming your way. Sorry. I said, I knew it. I knew someone did it. Had all the hallmarks of that, right? So I've seen that firsthand, yeah.
And I think you once described that you even have been able to see the earmarks of other weather workers because of some subtle shape that the currents have, the air currents.
That's right.
On. Yeah.
That's right. But it could also be like, let's say, I've seen this happen. About 15, 20 years ago, there was a lot of activity on the southwestern end of Colorado. I was like, somebody's really working. Well, I looked it up, and they were building a 1,200 home subdivision. So when the homes were being built, installing the infrastructure affected the weather. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So it goes that way too. But then it stabilized. It's just stabilized, right? Like just a bullet lodged in your head. After about 2 years, you don't feel it anymore, right? So you have to take that in consideration.
Mm-hmm. It is a bit like stealing fire from the gods, but I might as well, because
the gods are people also. The gods are people too. It says that even if you read the Bible, the Exodus 15, read it. They're people. Get over it.
The gods of 3D, but.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they just, it's a political system. They have politics there too. The demons are if you're a Republican, the Democrats are demonic. If you're demonic, the Republicans are, demonic, right? So the same way. That's why you have Satanists, right? The Satanists, to them, that's their hero, right? So who am I to say, right? It's can you see through the politics is the issue, right?
Yeah.
So here's an argument that I had with someone the other day. When you read like ancient texts, this is Satan's world, right? That's it. That's all it says. Satan's world. So everything that happens here, everything, I don't know, everything with a capital T, it says, So that means that Satan's possible. I told the person, they're very Christian, by the way. I was kind of messing with them. It wasn't fair. They weren't prepared for it. Because if they were educated, they wouldn't be Christian. But anyway, I'm not saying I'm educated, but let's just go with me. So it says, unconditionally, this is Satan's world. So that means that Satan's capable of good. And they're like, no, it has to be all bad. I said, well, okay, let me stop. Let's just close the argument right there. Let's go to a different topic. Is there any good in the world? And they're like, of course there is. Okay, stop. Unequivocally, this is Satan's world, right? Yes. So if there's good in the world, that means Satan allows good or is capable of good too. Period. End of argument. You see the politics now? Do you see what I'm talking about? It's kind of like going to a Democrat and saying, they're like, oh, all the Republicans are evil, but look, let's say they just did some legislation that benefited everyone. Oh, that was really good, but that was done by a Republican. Oh, no, it couldn't have been. You see the politics? You got to go through the politics, right? Anyway, don't want to get into quote-unquote religious stuff, but you can see how easy it is to defeat. I just gave you, like, the keys to winning any religious debate, by the way. And showing you how it's
to voice by the wrong petard.
Yeah, it's just political. It's just the more you understand politics, the more you'll understand religion and their arguments. It's just based on ignorance. That's why, who was it? Mark Twain said, never discuss religion. What is it? Politics or religion, because you will offend the ignorant. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but yeah, that's satisfied. Although,
by the way, I might be the only person on the internet that says Satan is capable of doing good. By the way, with that logic, so I'm not a Satanist. I just want to put that footnote out for sure. You know, I just want to show
Satanism.
Yeah, I just want to say that because maybe the Greeks are Satanists by default. No, I'm not. I'm just showing you that. Take the blinders off and clean your ears out and see what's being said and what's being done here. It's politics. So
yeah, even Satanism plays its role of encouraging the evolution, if there is one, but by giving a negative contrast. But yeah, that's pretty much most of what I had in mind. I mean, it's the subject exceeds the scope of this interview, so I'm gonna pass it on to John to Zan if he has any more questions.
I mean, we're already at 2 hours and 30 minutes, though. You know what I'm saying? We'd have to cut it off here and make this a nice chunk. I mean,
yeah, I could do that because these subjects, even we could have been talking on water for 8 hours straight, not repeating ourselves once. These topics are very deep. That's why in the beginning, speaking on water, I said just start observing what's really happening, what's really going on in front of you, right? And don't be so naive. Don't be so trusting. You know, check on their references when people bring up things, especially academic. You know, I mean, if you believe that Osama bin Laden vaporized the World Trade Center with box cutters, you know, I mean, go for it. You know, but that's funny how people say, well, that's not the official story. I say, well, then tell me the official story and show me how it's not that bizarre, right? So, well, what was it? I always like bring up 9/11 because it's very much like religion. In Pennsylvania, the airplane that crashed, it crashed with such a high velocity that it melted into the ground so deep that they can't dig up any airplane parts. That's the official story, by the way. So if you want to believe that and everything else they put out, more power to you if it works for you. But I'm telling you, it's you're dreaming and you don't know you're in a dream.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that was really revelatory. So thanks again for coming on. And if you have anything to plug or...
No, nothing at all. Just the Rated Y and Ocelli.com. Contact them. I have nothing really to do with it other than showing up and recording. And there's waterhelix.com if you want to see the device and get one. So, but those are my only shameless plugs. Otherwise, I really love being around you guys and doing these Sonics anytime.
Sure. Yeah, we should.
It means a whole hell of a lot.
We should catch up again in a few months.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. All right.
Bye.
Bye.